we grifters, 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 we grifters.
Shape the emerging UAP narrative. Remember those words, folks. Shape the emerging UAP narrative. Remember those words, folks.
I'm an intel guy. 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 I'm an intel guy.
We grifters, 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 we grifters.
Multiple whistleblowers.
Lue Elizondo.
Multiple whistleblowers.
Lue Elizondo.
Multiple whistleblowers.
Lue Elizondo.
Multiple whistleblowers.
Lue Elizondo.
We grifters, we grifters.
Remember those words.
We grifters, we grifters.
Remember those words.
We grifters, we grifters.
Say yes.
We grifters, we grifters.
Say yes.
We grifters, we grifters.
Say yes.
We grifters, we grifters.
Say yes. Say yes.
Lue Elizondo.
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 Truth Seekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Thanks for being here. This is Truth Seekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truth Seekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. you'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat room during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers. Truth Seekers.
Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. Tonight, we are going to be taking a bit of a detour. We have been getting many new subscribers, and I have been getting many messages that go something like this. What about this person selling alien and UFO stories? What about this person selling an alien or UFO story? Or what about this person? They can't all be grifters, liars, scammers, hoaxers, or thieves. And that is certainly true. And if I have been, I know I'm perceived as a lot more negative than perhaps I should be, and that's really a fault of my own. Along with the less than credible grifter squad, there is some good people in the UFO community who are truly interested in the mystery of UFOs and aliens and do actual good work. There are some good journalists that do actual good reporting, but the problem is I can generally count those people on one hand. The multitude that is left, I consider about as credible as a crackhead holding up a gas can, begging you for money for gas to get home. And that's just the reality. And it bears mentioning that if you get into this subject and you don't immediately understand and recognize that this whole field is filled with hoaxers and fraudsters and grifters, scammers, liars, and thieves, then you do your own self a disservice. I have, after sort of taking that second red pill, just taking the default position of being very skeptical of anyone making these claims. And history is our greatest teacher. Tonight, I'll be giving a presentation, which is going to be a little light on the multimedia side, but I have, 25 pages of notes to get through. It's sort of a data dump of my own brain, having been here for far too long, decades, in fact. Looking into every story that I could find, every individual who is a promoter of those stories that I could find. And I suppose I've walked away from much of that experience being incredibly skeptical and cynical. But I think that is a well-informed position given the available evidence. And we'll be going through a great deal of this evening. But before we do, we want to welcome in the live chat and also recognize some kind and generous benefactors. Of course, we are a viewer-supported show. If you become a YouTube channel member during the live show, we give you a big shout-out and thank you. So shout-out and thank you to Muppet Pimpin', who just became a YouTube channel member. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. But not only did Muppet Pimpin' become a YouTube channel member, also threw a couple of bucks in our hat with a $10 super sticker. Thank you for that. And another $10 super sticker. So we thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. It is much, much appreciated. Thank you very much, Muppet Pimpin'. And I don't know what that user ID is about, but I think it's a great user ID, actually. Muppet Pimpin'. I grew up with the Muppets, right? And Sesame Street. So thank you, Muppet Pimpin', for helping us to praise the cat. For those unaware, we read and thank every single person who sends us a super chat or a PayPal pledge or buys me a coffee. During live broadcast, we read every single one. If you send a PayPal pledge, please do add a note. Give me your chat room user ID, because most people probably don't want me reading their real names on air. In which case, if you forget, we just use initials so you know that we are specifically thanking and talking about you. But back to the subject at hand, the architects of the alien deception. I suppose that I should explain that I have been into this subject for many decades, having had a personal experience of my own. And because of that personal experience, I went looking for the truth and really just consumed and digested everything that I could find on the subject of aliens, flying saucers, UFOs, and the like. I suppose for a time, I believed anything that I read. I believed any documentary. It was only later that I began to sort of get more skeptical and sort of say, well, some of this just doesn't make any sense, or this person's background seems suspicious, and the claims they're making about their background seem suspicious. Eventually, I learned that there is an incredibly deceptive world of UFOs and aliens. And this deceptive world of UFOs and aliens requires a skeptical examination, especially about the profit-driven motive behind many of these stories. Because after all, we have said it here many times, the UFO thing is an industry, and it is a very profitable UFO industry. Just a few examples that I could cite off the top of my head. But Lue Elizondo and Tom DeLonge and friends collected several $1 million from the UFO, largely from the UFO community, in the form of investments in their supposedly for-public benefit company to the Stars Academy. They promised a great deal of things, including building a spaceship with a revolutionary power source that would change the world. They did none of the things that they promised, but they sure kept the money. Another example of note is Dr. Stephen Greer, who, by even just public internet records, we can prove has collected millions of dollars from the UFO community. And he holds very expensive events for what is largely evidence-free stories, like his big disclosure event where he was going to have new whistleblowers. Well, the whistleblowers turned out to be basically bullshitters, including my favorite, Eric Hecker. He's the guy that wears the patches, like he's got a uniform, but the truth is the guy's a plumber. You know, okay, he worked in Antarctica. He claims all kinds of things, and he has zero evidence of his claims, as did most of Stephen Greer's so-called UFO whistleblowers. So a word of caution if you are interested in this subject. First of all, I'm often portrayed as a bad guy, you know, because people have called me a CIA disinformation agent, and debunker, all manner of things. But the truth is, I actually go through the evidence with my audience. I give you the evidence. I give you the entire story, and people can make up their own mind. But on one side of this so-called battle between true believers, I suppose, and more skeptically minded people, you know, the true believers love to attack the skeptics, but usually they can't attack our facts, our evidence, or our research. So they resort to personal attacks, which often involves digging for dirt on people to find, you know, oh, maybe they got arrested for something in their background, or, you know, maybe there's some controversy there that we could just point to and say, see, they're a bad person. So don't listen to them when they tell you this is fake or that is fake, and even show you overwhelming evidence that that thing is fake. It's really, it's just a strange upside down world sometimes, in which, and, you know, by the way, I've been seeing people calling other people like Mick West and Stephen Greenstreet, most notably, calling them government disinformation agents. But isn't it interesting that those two people, along with myself, we give you a great deal of evidence to support our claims. And on the other side is largely lying scumbags with nothing but stories and, trust me, bros, you know, no evidence. So just a word of caution, before you call somebody a disinformation agent, evaluate the evidence that they present to support their claims. Regardless of what you think of skeptics or debunkers, they often present a great deal of evidence to support their claims. And the same cannot be said on the true believer side. We have a multitude of evidence-free storytellers who do the trust me, bro, or somebody told me, or they do that dance pretending that things are classified and they can't talk about it, when that is entirely not the case. If you know anything about classified projects, if a project is classified or, sensitive even, you can't talk about it in general terms, but then not give specifics. So this is just a plot device that some of these less than credible people use when they are selling false stories, misinformation, disinformation. And isn't it interesting that, I'm sure that some of the skeptics and debunkers have been wrong, but in my experience, they're willing to admit when they were wrong. And on that note, we had some kind of confusion. There was a great deal of confusion, and I kind of misunderstood what somebody sent me about Lue Elizondo meeting with the general. Turns out he did meet with the general, but it was the son of the general, who was also a general, that people thought he was talking about. When we make a mistake, I issue a correction, and the correction is on yesterday's video. Also, there was some confusion concerning whether the pilots involved in the Tic Tac incident saw the Tic Tac with their own eyes or not. There's a great deal of confusion about that. According to McWest's reporting, one of the pilots did not see anything visually, and he's given on the record statements of that. But as far as I understand, some of the other pilots did see it visually. So, and on that note also, there appears to be a lot of questions people are sending me about John from the Black Vault and his recent reporting on the confusion with OSAP, ATIP. Was it a program? Wasn't it a program? I commend John from the Black Vault's ability to keep digging through that stuff. As for this reporter, I've kind of seen enough. We've got multiple denials from the Pentagon saying he never ran a program. And at the end of the day, I don't even honestly care that if he did run a program. However, it's interesting that he has backed off his original claims, and the claims keep changing. First he ran a $22 million funded program, and he was the director of it. And the latest retconning of that is, well, it was a subset under the umbrella program, OSAP. It was, an offshoot of that program. And he was a key player, not the director. And he was recruited into that. But he's given all these different stories about it. Like, why can't we get a straight answer? And by the way, I mean, why can't we get a straight answer from the government as well? John from the Black Vault has probably spent more hours and hours and hours of his life trying to get through the minutia of that. But as for this reporter, I am kind of over the OSAP ATIP difference. If you're interested, we did an entire show breaking down the differences. But now, as is always the case with the UFO community, there's more and more confusion being heaped onto the pile, because now we have Dr. Eric Davis, who once in an interview with Stephen Greenstreet said, oh yeah, he ran ATIP and my boss reported to him, went to the Pentagon for meetings with him. He ran ATIP. Now, Eric Davis is in a Facebook group saying he never ran ATIP. He embellished everything. It's all embellishment. So there's a great deal of confusion. But I think if we just clear the mist away from this so-called mystery around Elizondo, there is no mystery. What people need to understand and know is that Lue Elizondo danced around the UFO community for 7 years now, pretending that he had insider secrets because he ran a UFO program. And after 7 years filling his pockets with every dollar he can, he suddenly publishes a book. And what we find out is he has no insider information and never did. Did he just pretend? Was it all a LARP, a live action role play? I ran a UFO program and I know all the secrets. So give me and my organization's money. By the way, he just started another for-profit UFO company, to the people that like to argue with me that he's not here for money. If he's not here for money, boy, is he wasting a lot of time trying to cash in on UFOs. And at the end of the day, I think the bottom line is that Lue Elizondo, his story keeps changing. And, like I said, he danced around the UFO community pretending that he had all these insider secrets that he couldn't reveal or he couldn't talk about. And then he finally publishes his book. And what we get is Hal Puthoff told me the aliens are real, and Hal Puthoff is a wackadoo. And we also get, oh, and by the way, I waited 7 years to tell you this. I was trained by the government in remote viewing, and I have superpowers, and I used my superpowers to shake a terrorist's bed. It's childish and stupid and ridiculous. But it's interesting that people will just waste all their time arguing about the differences between OSAP and ATIP and Lukatsky and Stratton and Elizondo. At the end of the day, I'm interested in who has actionable intelligence or information. And it appears that none of them do. It's all a dance in order to profit, in my view, in my opinion, and I'm entitled to that. But back to the deceptive world of UFOs and aliens. But before we get into the presentation, just want to take a moment to recognize the live chat. Welcome, Jim Morris. Welcome, Ty Lee. Welcome, Melvin O'Brien. Third Coast Swing. Bob Marley. Pathfinder. Chuck Bam. Aliens Are Sus. Patty Wilhelm. Ty Lee. Craig William. Tardigrade Hatchling. Arlene Atkins. I think I said Chuck Bam. If not, Lisa Savoy. I'll just give some shout outs here. Jason Parker. Too many people. I remember when there were so few people, I could shout everybody out. Chuck is here. Yeah, trying to see. Oh, Brenda Keating is here. Craig William. How do I even say that one? Me Pedot Tumba. Yes. Admiral Rascals, welcome to the show. ML Pathfinder. And if I missed you, I apologize. We've got way too. Talmud is here. Crypto Alchemist, Jeffrey Erica. I think I said Miss Tyree. Comply Zared is here, longtime show supporter. Good to see you. Sandra McDonald. 523 is here. King of Hugo Mundo is here. Amy Collins, Elise Diavalon, AZ, ML, Rosa Eros, Muppet Pimpin, of course. Sun Lover 5000, Michael Padilla, Jeff McGarvey. I think I got you. I think I got most of you. And if I missed you, Suspicious Skies 3045 is here. Tim Houston is here as well. Bobby Broadway is here, but late. Can I get anything like a watch, Bobby Broadway? No, we're glad you're here, late or not. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a dry presentation because I did not make slides and try to make this very fancy, so you'll have to bear with me. But maybe I will pause and take questions and comments from the live chat as we get through the deceptive world of UFOs, the architects of the alien deception. So first, we have already recognized what a profit-driven industry UFOs is. And well, we should, because the UFO and the alien industry is rife with deception, where storytellers and self-proclaimed insiders or whistleblowers fabricate tales of extraterrestrial encounters, secret government programs, imminent disclosure, government cover-ups as well, all in the name of profit. While these stories do captivate the imagination, they are often nothing more than elaborate hoaxes or fictional stories, masquerading as real stories that are designed to exploit the credulous and make money off the backs of the curious. Tonight, we're going to delve into some of the most prominent figures in this industry and expose how they've profited from peddling fake stories and false promises. These are, and by the way, this if I didn't include them tonight, that doesn't mean that they're a credible researcher or personality. I would be here for 8 hours if I tried to cover all the deceptive people in the UFO community. Tonight, we'll be focusing solely on perhaps the most famous or well-known of these, what I have called the architects of the alien deception. To begin, we begin with Hal Puthoff, who we covered extensively here. Hal Puthoff is a key figure in the world of pseudoscience, aliens, and UFOs, having co-founded the Stanford Research Institute. And by the way, even his organization, the Stanford Research Institute, is deceptive because, pardon me, And you'll have to forgive me, friends. I have quite a tickle in my throat. I'm kind of thinking that I'm getting a cold or flu or something. So pardon me. So even the Stanford Research Institute's name is deceptive, because most people hearing the word Stanford Research Institute would associate it with, Stanford University. And that's not the case. And I think this was intentional to make people believe that it was associated with Stanford University, which it is not. It is a private company that has nothing to do with Stanford, the school. But Stanford Research Institute's remote viewing program was funded by the CIA in the 1970s. And despite the program's failure to produce any credible results or evidence, Hal Puthoff and others have continued to profit from promoting Hal Puthoff's supposed expertise in fringe science and paranormal research. He later also became involved with Lue Elizondo into the Stars Academy, a group that claimed to be on the forefront of UFO disclosure. Puthoff's involvement in TTSA lended a veer of scientific credibility, since he was a scientist after all. But TTSA was essentially just a profit-driven enterprise, selling sensational stories and over-promising and under-delivering, and actually providing no evidence of their various out-of-this-world claims. Next, we get to one of the old-school UFO and alien peddlers, and that would be Kerry Cassidy. And you know what? I know what I will do. In an attempt to cover my lack of slides and make this a little more media-rich, one moment here. I think I know what I will do. I'll just share my screen and Google each person as we get through them. In case you're unfamiliar with them, you'll be able to recognize them. So Kerry Cassidy is the founder, one of them, along with Bill Ryan, of Project Camelot, which is a website and YouTube channel that promotes conspiracy theories. By the way, Bill Ryan has left Project Camelot and is no longer affiliated with Kerry Cassidy. They had a falling out of sorts. And I'm told that is because Kerry Cassidy would interview any wackadoo with a weird story that she could sell. And Bill Ryan wanted to be a little more serious and selective. At least that's what I've heard. Take from that what you will. Kerry Cassidy's videos promote conspiracy theories, particularly those involving UFOs, aliens, Q garbage, and government cover-ups. Cassidy claims to have interviewed numerous whistleblowers, but a critical examination of her so-called whistleblowers revealed that she often uses convicted criminals, I believe, in an effort to sort of have them role play the role of whistleblower, when in reality, they are very problematic convicted felons and in some cases convicted child predators who I believe she uses to sell fake alien stories. There is the most famous of her so-called whistleblowers is Bill Brockbrader, who you may be familiar with because he was basically he's a fugitive, and he's a fugitive because he's a court-martialed child predator who was required to register as a registered sex offender in his home state. And recently, remember the show America's Most Wanted? Well, the host of that show has a new show in which he hunts fugitives. And Bill Brockbrader is one of the people that they put on, is it Adam Walsh? I believe so. New show. And they were looking for the fugitive Bill Brockbrader, who Kerry Cassidy platformed as a secret space program insider. This is how stupid and ridiculous this gets. Kerry Cassidy is telling everybody this man Bill Brockbrader, he was in the secret space program and he's blowing the whistle. She just forgets to tell you that he's a court-martialed child predator who is now a fugitive from justice. But at the time, he was a court-martialed child predator that couldn't get a job elsewhere. So I guess he decided to work for her, telling secret space stories. This is very troubling, and it shows you the level of deception and immorality within the UFO community. So these so-called whistleblowers of hers, who are often criminals, including child predators, provide so-called insider information about extraterrestrial life and secret space programs. But despite the fantastical nature of her so-called insiders or whistleblowers claims, Cassidy has built a significant following and profits from donations, book sales, speaking engagements, ad revenue, and more, memberships to her website. But Kerry Cassidy is very, very morally and ethically bereft in this reporter's view, because her willingness to give a platform to just about anyone with a sensational story, regardless of any, lack of evidence and credibility, it's amazing to me that she is still a central figure in the UFO conspiracy community. And next, I should at least mention some of the early contactees, which will show you the fantastical nature of some of this stuff. George Adamski is one of the early contactees, along with a man named Howard Menger, who is slightly lesser known. And George Adamski and Howard Menger were two of the earliest figures in the UFO contactee movement in the 1950s. Adamski claimed to have met with benevolent aliens from Venus, while Menger told stories of encounters with extraterrestrials who visited his home in New Jersey. Both of these men, George Adamski and Howard Menger, published books and gave lectures and sold books and made a significant amount of money by selling their stories to a public eager to believe in life beyond Earth, especially remembering that this was in the 1950s when flying saucers first became hugely popular. Their claims, both of them, George Adamski and Howard Menger, have been thoroughly debunked. Their so-called laughable evidence, which amounted to terribly hoaxed photos, has been thoroughly debunked as fake. Yet, still, these early contactees set the stage for a long line of UFO hoaxers who followed in their footsteps. And next we get to, I'm going to try to keep this. I hesitated to include him in this presentation because, quite honestly, I'm biased. I love that Communion movie with, God, he is one of the most interesting characters in UFO land. And I did interview him one time. I was a little bit starstruck, right? There's an excellent movie that went along with the book, but Whitley Strieber is very problematic. He's best known for his book Communion, which details his supposed encounters with alien beings. And the book became a bestseller, selling millions of copies, and sparked widespread interest in alien abduction stories. And despite the lack of evidence and the dreamlike, often contradictory nature of his experiences, Strieber has continued to profit from his claims, writing numerous follow-up books and becoming a prominent figure in the UFO community. In fact, after his Communion book was such a big success, he never, to my knowledge, he focused his career solely on writing UFO stories, which he claimed were real. And isn't it interesting that every time he needed money, along comes another book from Whitley with incredible new experiences with otherworldly beings? I find that incredibly suspicious. Whitley Strieber's stories have been criticized for blurring the line between fiction and reality. Yet, they continue to resonate with those who want to believe. And he has a very popular show about UFOs and aliens and the like. What I could say about Whitley Strieber is he's an extremely likable guy. You could have a great, fun conversation with him, and I sure did, until he started talking about aliens anally probing him. That was a little bit uncomfortable, right? We'll take a moment to thank Penn Taxenstein. I think I got that right. Here's to James Randi for crushing Washington University's psychic research program. I remember all about that. Very interesting. And I thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and support, and for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
So what can I say? Whitley Strieber is, although being a very likable fellow and an interesting guy, I'm always interested in creative, artistic people, and he's one of those kind of people, but I couldn't leave him off this list. And here's why. This man has made a career out of selling alien and UFO stories. And even during the interview with me, he claimed that he had an alien implant. And I was like, great, let's go to a surgeon, get that thing cut out. We'll have proof of alien visitation on Earth. He didn't want to do that. After the interview, I kind of followed up about that. If you're claiming that you have 100% smoking gun evidence of extraterrestrial visitation on Earth and it's behind your ear, then give it up, bro. So I don't really, although his stories are extremely entertaining, I'll give him that. I don't find anything that he has put forth to be credible, because it's all trust me, bro. It's all trust me, bro. And remember, this communion book sold millions of copies. So you do the math. How much money did he make at $10 a copy? What was his take at millions and millions of this book sold? And by the way, he's come out with a special anniversary edition, which I hear is selling quite well. So again, we turn our attention to the profit-driven motive. Now, on to one of my favorites. I can't help it. He's one of my favorites. He is Dr. Stephen Greer, who by some accounts is the most financially successful UFO grifter on planet Earth. And the reason I think that is because you can look through his GoFundMes. Well, they're GoFundMe. It's like crowdsourcing efforts to fund his films. And each one of those films collected either $1 million or more or $500,000. So every time you see, except for the third phase of Clown Greer ones, but the ones that he was, the principal producer of, he collected either $1 million or $500,000 to make each film. And I challenge you to look at his films and tell me that that's a $500,000 or $1 million film. It isn't. So what does he do with all the money that he hasn't spent on the film? 3 guesses. Dr. Stephen Greer is a former emergency room physician who transitioned into the world of UFOs and extraterrestrial contact. He founded the Disclosure Project in 2001, which aimed to force the U.S. government to reveal its supposed knowledge of UFOs and alien life. And every year, big supporters of Greer would say that this is going to be the year of disclosure. Well, we're 23 years later, and we still don't have any form of disclosure, but Greer has made millions of dollars. What does that tell you about Stephen Greer? Greer has since built an empire around his alien claims, offering expensive workshops, producing documentaries, and selling access to a, quote, alien contact experiences, unquote, through his CE5 app, which you can buy for $10. And I don't know if there's something wrong with the consumer fraud laws in the United States, but essentially, Dr. Stephen Greer promises people that if you buy his app for $10, you can summon alien spaceships and alien visitors. And despite repeatedly claiming that disclosure is imminent, Greer has provided 0 concrete evidence to support his out-of-this-world claims. But it is true that he has been caught in various hoaxes, including claiming that a moth was an alien being, claiming that a cactus was an interdimensional alien, and more. There's also the controversy around his charging people money for a CE5 event to see those alien spaceships and going to a place where I believe he knew there would be flares dropped that day. It's a famous case. It's for sure flares, yet he clearly in the video is telling people those are alien spaceships. So Greer has collected millions of dollars selling and telling stories about aliens and UFOs, but he's provided 0 evidence to support his claims, yet he has been caught in many fake hoaxes. Yet he continues to profit handsomely from those desperate for answers. And next we get my favorite grifter team up, which would be George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. And again, I apologize for not making slides in advance, but I'm putting this here on the side of my screen as a placeholder because maybe I can edit this when we get through it and re-upload it with a little more media-rich help. So George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. George Knapp is a journalist who has made a career out of covering UFOs and paranormal phenomena. Most notably through his promotion of Bob Lazar, a controversial figure who claimed to have been a government scientist that worked on reverse engineering alien technology at Area 51. There's just one problem. Bob Lazar is not now, nor was he ever, a real scientist. He is a convicted pimp, fake scientist who was bankrupt shortly before coming out with a story. And what bothers me most about the Bob Lazar story and George Knapp's involvement in this is that George Knapp knows that knew that his education was fake and that he was a fake scientist. But Knapp chose to promote him and sell his story anyway. And Knapp continues to sell his story. George Knapp has been instrumental in keeping Bob Lazar's fake story alive. And despite a lack of any evidence that Bob did any of the things he claimed, Jeremy Corbell, a filmmaker with the morals of a criminal, has partnered with Knapp to produce documentaries that further sensationalize these claims, such as the film Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers. Both Knapp and Corbell have profited from promoting these dubious stories, with Corbell especially focusing on making UFOs a pop culture phenomenon. Both George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell have been caught selling multiple fake stories, but this has not had any impact on their huge following among UFO fans and alien fans. And this will inform you something about the UFO community that is very, very strange. In a community that claims they're going after the truth, many of the stars of this UFO and alien culture and subculture get caught selling 100% completely and totally fake stories, and they have no consequences. In any other area of documentary filmmaking, of journalism, of reporting, of being a news person, commentator, content creator, in any other area except for UFOs and aliens, if you get caught multiple times selling completely and totally fake stories, your career is over. But these things, these controversial fake stories that both Knapp and Jeremy Corbell have been caught in, really haven't impacted their bottom line or their ability to profit from stupid people. And that, my friends, makes me a little bit sad. And then, of course, there's our favorite grifting grandma. Our favorite grifting grandma is Linda Moulton Howe. And I just want to mention that I get a lot of flack. People say things to me like, oh, she's an old lady, leave her alone. But I just want to say, and really, I mean this sincerely, answer me this question in the live chat or in the comments. If you knew for a fact that your grandmother was scamming people on the internet with fake alien pictures that you know were fake, would you stand up and say, yo, grifting grandma, you can't scam people on the internet, grifting grandma? Or would you just let your grandma grift? I have been very vocal because Linda Moulton Howe is yet another one of those individuals in the UFO community with a huge following, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, some say millions of dollars, and she keeps getting caught selling completely and totally fake stories. Don Shipley, well-known Navy SEAL, called her out for using fake Navy SEALs in some of her fake stories. And his reasoning and evidence that she used a fake Navy SEAL is irrefutable. The man gave a rank. He claimed he was a Navy SEAL, and then she asked him his rank in the Navy, and he gave a rank that isn't a Navy rank. A Navy SEAL would know what his rank is. And also he argued that Navy SEALs don't go on rescue missions to Antarctica. They have specialists for things like that. But back to... so really, let me know in the comments, am I being too harsh? Or if your grandmother was grifting and scamming people on the internet with fake alien pictures, by the way, we have caught her dead to rights, selling completely and totally fake pictures of aliens, not once, but twice. And she still hasn't taken the videos down. They're still monetized, and she's still collecting money off of completely and totally fake alien pictures she claims were real. And I think that's a major problem, and this is why I call her the grifting grandma. Linda Moulton Howe is a journalist who has spent decades promoting stories about UFOs, alien abductions, cattle mutilations, cryptid creatures, and more. And despite a lack of any credible evidence, Howe has become a major figure in the UFO community. By some reports, Linda Moulton Howe gets $20,000 to appear at one UFO conference and speak for 2 hours. That's incredible to me, especially considering how many times she's been caught selling fake stories. So she's a major figure in the UFO community, and this too informs us about the UFO community. Why is the UFO community so willing to accept proven liars and scammers and then pay them large sums of money to appear at UFO events? Your guess is as good as mine. Linda Moulton Howe, despite being caught selling completely and totally fake pictures of aliens multiple times, and being caught selling completely fake stories that she claimed were people that were Navy SEALs, despite all of the evidence of her fakery, fraudery, and bullshittery, she's still regularly appearing at conferences and on television programs. She has also monetized her work through books, DVDs, and a subscription-based website. Howe's willingness to promote fake stories, fake alien pictures, sensational stories, regardless of their veracity, has made her a controversial figure. Yet she continues to have a large following and make huge sums of money. I'll take a moment to recognize some kind and generous friends. Here we have Larry Love, who says, it always struck me wrong as to why do the aliens always talk to like the worst of humanity, like the for-profit people. Very good observation, and we're going to get to that on the next person for sure.
Raise the cash.
All right, and then we have another one from Larry Love. Very kind and generous of you, 2 of them. On Joe Rogan's podcast, Lue said he's not cleared to talk about certain UFO UAPs, but then talks about certain ones the entire show. It makes make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. And in fact, I believe that Lue Elizondo is lying. If something is classified, he wouldn't be cleared to put it in his book. He wouldn't even be allowed to mention it. So this is the dance that they all do, Larry Love. And it doesn't make sense because it's bullshit. And Lue Elizondo is a master at dancing around. Remember all the times he talked about NDAs and, I have to be careful here. The Arrow report proved there is no NDAs specific to UFOs or UAPs. So was he just pretending that whole time that he couldn't talk because of his NDAs that don't exist? I think Elizondo is nothing but just another UFO grifter, and I'm entitled to that opinion based on available evidence. But thank you, Larry Love.
Raise the cash.
All right, and on the note that Larry Love talked about, why do the aliens talk to the worst people on planet Earth and reveal their truth to the worst people on planet Earth? Your guess is as good as mine, but we'll talk about Corey Goode. And Corey Goode is an interesting case because Corey Goode claims to have been part of a secret space program where he supposedly spent 20 years working with extraterrestrial beings before being age regressed and time traveled back to his original point of departure and time of departure. Goode's completely and totally unbelievable and outlandish stories, including encounters with bluebird aliens called blue avians and ancient alien civilizations, have been widely criticized as baseless fabrications. Nonetheless, Goode has monetized his claims through appearances at UFO conferences, streaming television show at Gaia TV, online courses, a subscription-based video series, and more. His partnership with David Wilcock, another incredibly ridiculous and figure in the UFO community, further amplified his reach, along with Gaia's amplifying his reach, turning his stories into a very lucrative business. By some accounts, Corey Goode has made millions of dollars He spent, I think it's 8 years now, telling people about his Buck Rogers secret space adventures, and he has yet to provide a single shred of evidence. But there is overwhelming evidence about what kind of a person Corey Goode is. Because in a courtroom deposition he had to give, Corey Goode admitted to paying the neighbor of Bill Ryan to take pictures of Bill Ryan's house. Bill Ryan was one of his online critics, so that they could make a video to intimidate and scare Bill Ryan into silence. He admitted that under oath, which shows you just how dumb this guy is, because that's literally a criminal act of stalking, I would think, and harassment. But interestingly, Corey Goode spent something like 8 years cashing in, and he did some incredibly destructive things, like sue all of his online critics, sue his former business partners, claiming that they were embezzling from him. But during the courtroom deposition he had to give, he admitted that he took money from that account from his partners that wasn't his, to the tune of perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars. I suppose he lives by that rule, accuse others of that which you do. I have not seen any evidence that his former business partners embezzled from him, but we have an admission that Corey Goode embezzled from them in the form of that deposition. And also, it should be noted that Truth Seekers was the first to publish all of those depositions. I had them weeks before anybody heard them. And I'm sitting there listening to this guy admit that he'd never been to space, admit that he'd never been to Mars, admit that he'd never been to the moon, admit that he made up the stories, or he added on to his real experiences with fictionalized, add-ons. And interestingly, the lawyer was like, well, which part of this is fake and which part of this is real? And he said, what does it matter? So spectacularly, after Corey Goode had made hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, selling his secret space Buck Rogers time travel adventure stories, which he claimed were real, he admitted under oath they were all just his creation, like Star Wars in a galaxy far, far away, like Han Solo, and that these stories were his intellectual property. Spectacularly, he admitted under oath that he'd never been to space. And he'd never been, actually, that reminds me, I have some old clips. We haven't played these in quite some time. Let me see if we can't find that. Oh, yeah, I still have these. I still have some of these. So, interestingly, what you need to know about Corey Goode is that he spent all of this time selling his secret Buck Rogers space adventures. And my favorite is the one where he said he'd never been to Mars under oath. And then he said, I never said I went to Mars. No, I didn't say that. Here's a clip that proves just how ridiculous this whole UFO community is, of Corey Goode admitting under oath he'd never been to Mars.
Never lived on Mars. No, never said that.
You never said that you lived on Mars?
No.
They would ship everything was prefabricated. Everything had been put together on Earth, designed to go together like a puzzle by numbers. And I helped actually to build out an outpost on Mars. And we used a lot of the local materials on the surface after they had built below ground. And it was very much like this. It was much lower tech than you would expect.
Never lived on Mars. No, never said that.
You never said that you lived on Mars?
No.
Yeah, so this is how ridiculous it gets. What we did is we took a clip from the deposition where he says, I've never been to Mars. I never said I went to Mars. And we juxtaposed it with a live speaking engagement, which, by the way, I believe I was told by a source that he got paid $10,000 for that live speaking engagement, in which he's describing going to Mars, living on Mars, building a base on Mars. And then, again, in the deposition, I never said I went to Mars. So, what we need to know is that these people are incredibly deceptive. And I, for one, think that this Corey Goode story is a laugh riot. And by the way, there is a docu-series about this whole thing that's going to be on streaming services very soon. I can't say any more except that I was interviewed for that docu-series, and as were many other people that have intimate knowledge of his deceptions, and it's all coming out. So interesting, what a deceptive man to imagine spending 8 years of your life lying to people about your Buck Rogers science fiction fantasy stories, and then admitting under oath that it was all fake. And by the way, it's important that we realize Corey Goode thought that the deposition would be marked like confidential and that nobody in the UFO community would ever see him admit these things. But his lawyer screwed up because she's an idiot, and the depositions were actually public information. So they were, and by the way, just to be clear, I received a legal threat letter with his lawyer claiming that I was violating the law, publishing those depositions and demanding I take them down. That was not the case. His lawyer screwed up. You can't just mark an entire deposition confidential. And she thought you could. And so we were perfectly within our legal rights to broadcast those depositions. And to this day, actually for the rest of my run here, I will be proud that we published those depositions. It was a hell of a week trying to redact everything for privacy and whatever, but I knew that it was in the public's benefit. This guy spent 8 years of his life selling fake secret space stories, and then he admits under oath, oh, I never been to space. I made up these stories, like Star Wars. It's my intellectual property. It's my creation. And certainly, I thought that the public had the right to know this. And interestingly, Corey Goode is just doubling down. He's still telling secret space stories as if the depositions never happened. But I will say that his once very powerful influence is gone. He used to get like thousands and thousands of live viewers when he did a video. His last live stream, I checked in on, he had 200 live viewers or something like that, which is pitiful when this man used to make hundreds of thousands of dollars with this grift, Yeah, so on to the next contestant on UFO Grift Squad. And I'm sorry, I wish the news were better. But we're going to go on to some of the more modern ones. I don't have these in any particular order, so I apologize for that. So David Grusch is certainly a more recent figure who has gained incredible amount of attention with his claims of being a whistleblower with so-called insider knowledge of UFOs and government cover-ups. Grusch made headlines by claiming and asserting that the U.S. government possessed non-human spacecraft and even alien bodies. And despite the sensational nature of his claims, Grusch has not provided any verifiable evidence. His stories have been eagerly picked up by less than credible media outlets, most notably News Nation, driving traffic and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ad revenue their way. But Grusch, while Grusch himself has become a sought-after speaker in the UFO circuit, it's important to note that since Dave Grusch made his original claims that included the fact that interdimensional space monsters are murdering Earthlings, it has been 448 days since he made his original claims, and he has yet to provide a single shred of any evidence of his fantastical claims, including, like I said, the government's got alien spaceships, the government's got alien bodies, and that interdimensional space monsters are murdering humans on Earth somehow. And it's also notable that the only details that he actually gave in some of his testimony were that of an Italian UFO crash that was a complete and total fake story and a hoax. This is a huge red flag. Also a red flag is that Dave Grusch, in his original interview, claimed that he had no mental problems. Later, we find out that he was a former mental patient for a short time, and also that he did have mental illness. He apparently suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, but he told multiple stories about how he got the PTSD. I think that David Grusch, quite honestly, I think that he was used by people within the UFO community to sell a story. And it is factually accurate when I state that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars was generated by the Dave Grusch stories that were being peddled on the internet. However, none of those outlets have provided any evidence or proof of Grusch's claims, and neither has he. So what we're left with is a stunning example of how somebody with a good military background or intelligence background can just go on the internet and tell stories and literally generate hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars for both himself and the people pushing and promoting the stories. All right. And next, we have another of my favorites. 1 second here. We have Richard Doscam Dolan. And Richard Dolan is one of those people that people like to argue with me about. Oh, no, Stephen, he's one of the credible ones. I should note that it's just, this is my personal belief and speculation. The UFO community and the world of UFOs is like wrestling. Everybody has their like character, their shtick. And Richard Dolan's shtick is, I'm the serious historical researcher. And quite honestly, that works very well. And it did set him apart from some of the more spectacular wackadoo sort of people. However, Richard Dolan has been involved in multiple UFO hoaxes, one of which with Jaime Maussan earned hundreds of thousands of dollars for a pay-per-view event about fake so-called Roswell slides, which were purported to be from a picture or a slide of a picture from an alien being that crashed at Roswell. This has since proven to be completely and totally false. It wasn't an alien being. It was a mummy from a museum, a mummified child, in fact. And this also highlights that people, no matter how depraved and disgusting and deceptive and despicable you think these people get, let's take a moment to recognize and understand that people are willing to desecrate human remains in order to sell a fake alien story. We've got the Roswell slides. We've got those fake Mexican alien mummies. By the way, both those hoaxes were from the same person, Jaime Maussan. We've got the Atacama humanoid. We've got the Stark child skull. There are multiple examples of people who are willing to desecrate and, you know, really disparage human remains, which I think are something that is sacred and shouldn't be messed with, in order to sell fake alien stories. Richard Dolan helped promote the Roswell slides. He was a paid speaker at the event, and he laughed at the people who were upset that they paid good money and got scammed by the Roswell slides hoaxer in chief, Jaime Maussan. Richard Dolan has also promoted heavily the so-called Wilson Davis notes, which are completely and totally fake, as evidenced by the principal person involved in those notes, Admiral Tom Wilson, saying that these are, quote, a work of fiction, unquote. And that quote was gotten by Stephen Greenstreet of the New York Post. So he's selling these notes, claiming that they're proof of an alien cover-up, and the admiral involved comes out and says, no, these are a work of fiction. What does Richard Dolan do? He doubles down and calls a decorated Navy admiral with no history of selling fake shit or lying to people a liar, in order to continue to still sell these notes as real, or, you know, he called them the UFO bombshell of the century. They're completely and totally fake notes that were provided, apparently, by wackadoo Eric Davis. You remember him. He's the wackadoo who, you know, basically his crackpot research is what the Air Force called Eric Davis's research, crackpot research. He's a true believer, alien wackadoo that just so happens to keep getting involved with government programs somehow. In any case, Richard Dolan claims that he's a historian. He does have a history degree, so I guess that's accurate. And he's positioned himself as a serious researcher in the UFO community. But the truth is, like I said, he's been involved in a great deal of fake stories. He has written several books on the subject, including UFOs in the National Security State series, which claims to document the history of government involvement with UFOs. And while Dolan presents himself as a credible investigator, he's been involved in multiple hoaxes. And his wife, Tracy Dolan, is, by some reports, a high-ranking Scientologist who also claims to have superpowers. And recently, Richard Dolan and his wife were selling people a course, I believe it was $159, where you too could get superpowers for just $159. This blows any claims that he's a credible researcher to shit, because no credible researcher would sell people superpowers from their psychic superpowered wife for $159. His work often relies on unverified accounts and speculative connections, but it's still, he's become a central figure in promoting the idea of a UFO cover-up. Dolan has profited from books, his monetized views on his YouTube channel, speaking engagements, online courses, and more, all while maintaining an aura of respectability in a field rife with charlatans. So Richard Dolan's sort of shtick or gimmick is, I'm a serious researcher. And while he's claiming to be a serious researcher, he's selling people superpowers with him and his wackadoo wife in a course for $159. I believe that I believe that Richard Dolan is not at all credible, despite the facade that he puts forth as a credible researcher. And next, we're going to double up, try to get through these quickly. Lue Elizondo is a former Pentagon official we have covered extensively here, who claims to have headed a official funded Pentagon UFO program. However, as of the time of this broadcast, his claims are now changing. And instead of saying he was the director of a $22 million funded program, now he's claiming he was just a key part of a subset of another program, and it was an unofficial portfolio. So he claims that he ran a secret government project investigating UFOs. The Pentagon has disputed his claims, essentially calling him a fraud and a liar. But most troubling to me is Elizondo's involvement with the TTSA, To the Stars Academy, founded by former Blink-182 guitarist Tom DeLonge. DeLonge, in particular, has used his celebrity status to promote the idea that UFO disclosure is imminent and coming any day now. And despite offering little more than anecdotal evidence and government documents that have been known for years, the To the Stars Academy has monetized these claims through book deals, television shows, and public appearances, capitalizing on the public's fascination with the unknown. It's important to note that To the Stars Academy made many claims while soliciting millions of dollars from the public. Most or all of those claims we now know are false. They claimed they would build a spaceship with a revolutionary power source that would change the world. They never did that. They claimed they may be in possession of pieces of alien technology from crashed UAP or UFOs. Well, now we know that that was bullshit, because those pieces, which, by the way, was a hoax that Linda Moulton Howe was involved with called Art Parts, those pieces, we know now from the recent Arrow report, were ordinary earthly metals, a piece of a missile casing from the 1950s. They were not what TTSA or Linda Moulton Howe claimed them to be, which is essentially pieces of alien spaceships. I have reported so extensively on Lue Elizondo that if you're a normal viewer, I don't want to repeat myself so much. So we're going to move on to our next contestant, Simon Parkes. He's one of my favorites because he's just so wacky. For those unaware, Simon Parkes claims that he has an alien girlfriend that's a cat lady, and he has sex with her. Yeah, you heard it. This guy claims that he has sex with a cat lady alien. Simon Parkes was a British politician and a UFO enthusiast. He claims to have had numerous extraterrestrial encounters, including fathering a child with an alien cat queen being. Parkes has become a prominent figure in the UFO community and also the Q community. He offers online consultations and lectures. He has been accused of, let's just say, sexual misconduct with multiple of his clients. His stories are outlandish, to say the least, yet he's managed to build a huge following and create huge profit from his wacky claims, including losing his virginity to an alien as a young child. Parkes represents the extreme end of the UFO community, where the line between fantasy and reality is almost non-existent. And next contestant is another of my favorites, and you guys know this, and that would be Ross Coulthart. Disgraced Australian journalist Ross Coulthart. So 1 second here. Let me catch up to you kind and generous benefactors. Muppet Pimpin is here with a kind and generous $10 super chat. Another one. Very, very generous of you. And I did read what you said about your business and the blessings that you have. And all I can tell you is God bless you, Muppet Pimpin. I know from being a business owner myself, it's the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, besides being married, by the way. Thank you. I'm glad for your success, and I will put you in my daily prayers for continued success. Thank you for your kindness. All right, now we have Larry Love, who says, don't get me started on Grusch, a.k.a. Alien Crush. Said he's being careful because of the pension. Like, dude, you said multi-dimensional beings. You're right, Larry Love. Kind of generous, $4.99. Thank you. I think that eventually David Grusch's stories will be a case study in how you can make millions of dollars in a immoral, unethical way in the media with completely and totally evidence-free stories. Another one from Larry Love for $9.99 said, Lue said the government cannot say certain stuff because Homeland Security needed to remain a strategic advantage. Like, dude, you told us a UFO shut down a nuke. What advantage do we have? You're right. You're right. And see, Larry Love, and to everybody listening, what he just said is exactly what is the problem with this thing. Like, even if you apply a little bit of logic to some of the dumb shit these clowns say, you walk away scratching your head going, this doesn't make any sense. These people are nutty. But thank you, Larry Love. We appreciate you. Thanks for appreciating us. Right, and we've got Muppet Pimpin with another kind of generous $10. You're quickly becoming my favorite viewer. Not just because you're throwing money at me, but thank you so much for your kindness. All right, friends, we're going to move on to he's really one of my favorite UFO grifters, because this guy came out of nowhere and suddenly he was like on top of the UFO grifter scene, which I thought was strange, you know? So I started researching him, and what I found out is that he was a disgraced Australian journalist who essentially lost his job, got fired. People always hate when I say that. Okay. I'll use what they say. Ross Coulthart says his contract was not renewed with 60 Minutes after he promoted a completely and totally fake story about and called people child predators that were not. So talk about a disgraced journalist. Imagine being a journalist and promoting and propping up a completely fake story in which you accused innocent men of being child predators. And you know what kind of child predators I mean. That's what he did on 60 Minutes Australia. Turns out that story was completely and totally fake. And this, my friends, is why I believe Ross Coulthart jumped into the world of UFOs, because he couldn't get a job for a real news organization after what he did to those British Parliament members. So Ross Coulthart, from fake news to UFO fantasies. Ross Coulthart is a former Australian so-called investigative journalist who has recently gained notoriety in the UFO community for his claims of secret government knowledge of extraterrestrial beings and UFOs. Coulthart, who previously worked for 60 Minutes Australia, has transitioned from mainstream journalism to promoting sensational, often evidence-free UFO stories and narratives, often without providing any evidence to back up his claims. While he has become a significant figure in the UFO world, his credibility is marred by his past involvement in promoting completely and totally 100% provably fake stories. One of the most damaging of these is in Coulthart's career occurred during his time with 60 Minutes Australia, where he was involved in promoting an incredibly sensational story about an alleged British pedophile ring involving high-profile figures within the British government and parliament. This story, which Coulthart presented as a bombshell and the biggest story ever about the British government, was later proven to be 100% completely and totally false. The accusations of his so-called witnesses were based on completely unreliable sources and lies and misinformation. And this, of course, led to severe damage to the reputation of the innocent individuals who he accused of being child predators. The fallout from this scandal was significant, and Coulthart was eventually let go from 60 Minutes as a result of his role in promoting the fake story. Now, Ross Coulthart claims that they were just making some changes and they didn't renew his contract, but come on. We're supposed to believe that that story that was completely fake, where you accused good, innocent men, family men who had wives and children of being child predators, that had nothing to do with you being let go? I don't believe it. I believe he was let go specifically because of that story, but that's my personal opinion. I still believe I'm entitled to that opinion, and so would you be if you agreed with that. And despite this disgraceful episode in his career, Coulthart managed to reinvent himself within the UFO community, where he now presents himself as an authoritative voice on the subject. He has claimed to have insider knowledge about government UFO programs and has suggested that disclosure is imminent. However, just as in his previous journalistic endeavors, which were less than stellar, Coulthart has yet to provide any verifiable evidence to substantiate his extraordinary claims. His shift from conventional journalism to promoting unverified UFO narratives suggests a pattern of sensationalism, where the goal is more about attracting attention and profit than about uncovering the truth. Coulthart's ability to move from one sensational but ultimately debunked story to another reflects a broader issue within the UFO industry, where individuals with questionable backgrounds can find a new audience and continue to profit despite past sins and indiscretions. Let's be sure that we understand that Ross Coulthart brought us the Dave Grusch story, and it's been 448 days now, and neither Ross Coulthart or Grusch has proven a single thing that they claimed in that story. But now Ross Coulthart is on to promoting a new story, another bullshitter in the form of Lue Elizondo, who has equally no evidence, just like Dave Grusch. And as I said earlier, this is a problem in the so-called UFO industry. Coulthart can just move from one sensational story that gets debunked as false or evidence-free right into a new story that is false and evidence-free. And this certainly is an issue within the so-called UFO industry. You can't do this in any other endeavor. You can't do this as a journalist covering any other subject. You'll lose your career instantly. But in the UFO world, it's just fine. He's been caught selling multiple fake stories. And let's not forget that Ross Coulthart has claimed that he knows where the location of a giant alien spaceship is that was so big it can't be moved. That's right. It's so big it can't be moved. And so, it just gets more and more ridiculous with this guy. You know where a giant alien spaceship is, but it's so big it can't be moved. It's pretty stupid, right? It's so stupid, in fact, that people have made art about his ridiculous claims of a giant alien spaceship. And just to break things up a little bit, this is a music video by Simon Fly called So Big. And it's all about Ross Coulthart's ridiculous claims that he knows where a giant spaceship is, but it's so big it can't be moved, so they build a building around it. And he knows exactly where the giant alien spaceship is, but he can't tell us. Oh, friends, it just gets dumber and dumber the deeper down the rabbit hole you go.
What if some of that shit is so big? What if some of that shit is so big it can't be moved? Big, it can't be moved. Big. What if some of that shit is so big? What if some of that shit is so big it can't be moved? Big, it can't be moved. Big. In a country outside of the United States, there's big. In a country outside of the United States of America. In a country outside of the United States of America. Big. In a country outside of the United States of America. Big. 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 They're too bloody big. They're too bloody big. So they're too bloody big. They're too bloody big. They're too bloody big. They're too bloody big. So they're too bloody big. They're too bloody big. I know exactly where it is. I know exactly where it is. But it was bollocks big, 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 big. But it was bollocks big, 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 big.
Yes, my friends, this is how stupid and ridiculous some of these people get in their wild claims. As if nobody was going to call them on that. Wait, you know where a giant alien spaceship is? Oh, but you can't tell us, right? It's so childish, you know. It's like a child in a, I've used this analogy a whole bunch of times, only because I had somebody in my childhood. We're all kids in the playground. Maybe we're like 6 or 7. And this kid comes up to all of us kids and says, I got a laser gun. And of course, we're all like, cool, show us the laser gun. He's like, oh, I can't show you the laser gun. It's a secret. You know, this is so stupid and so childish. This is exactly what these people are like. Children in the playground claiming to have a spaceship or claiming to have a laser gun. So Ross Coulthart's history of promoting provably fake stories. And by the way, we have a whole series on all of his fake stories here. That I think it's like 8 hours long. And I'm just here to tell you, if somebody can make a video that it takes 8 hours to explain all your fakery, fraudery, and bullshittery, then you're not a journalist. You're a piece of shit. And that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. I really value journalism. And the fact that this guy calls himself a journalist and keeps getting caught selling just shit-peddled garbage it's offensive to me. It's insulting to both the audiences and to me and anybody that respects journalism. So his history of completely fake stories raised serious questions about his credibility and the motivations behind his current involvement in the UFO community. For those seeking the truth about UFOs and extraterrestrial life, Coulthart's track record serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of accepting sensational journalists making claims without any critical scrutiny. It's also important that we point out that Ross Coulthart is deeply involved with all of these other grifters. They all work together. He's worked with Dave Grusch to sell fake stories. He's worked with Gary Nolan to sell fake stories. He's worked with Lue Elizondo to sell fake stories. This man is willing to do anything. And by the way, I have a source that tells me, and I'm not sure that this is correct because it's a single source, but it's a source I trust, who tells me that Ross Coulthart knows this is all fake. But he's doing this because he can't get a job in real journalism anymore. And he knows that, and he knows these stories will sell. If that's the case, then Ross Coulthart is truly a despicable, disgusting individual, because not only is he willing to lie to make money, he's willing to employ other people he knows are liars in order to make money for himself and for his friends, I suppose. But in any case, we have covered him extensively. You know, some would say obsessively, but I just couldn't believe that this person could get away with selling so many fake stories. And again, back to what I've said previously, how many times can you get caught selling a completely 100% fake story in the UFO community and still have a career selling stories in the UFO community? Apparently, that number is unlimited. That number is unlimited. You could just keep getting caught selling fake stories and you still have a lucrative career in the UFO community. Maybe that's why it attracts so many scammers and hoaxers, because they know even if I get caught, I can just make up new shit and I'll still make money. It's kind of ridiculous. We're going to move on to Travis Walton. another UFO profiteer who has made a lucrative lifelong career out of his story. Travis Walton's story is one of the most famous alien abduction cases in history. Walton claimed that in 1975, while working as a logger in Arizona, he was abducted by a UFO and subjected to experiments on board an alien craft before being returned some 5 days later. His story became the basis for the book, The Walton Experience, and the 1993 Hollywood film, Fire in the Sky. Now, I have to admit, I like that movie, Fire in the Sky, but I view it as science fiction, not as a real story. And despite inconsistencies in Walton's account and the lack of corroborating evidence, his tale has become a cornerstone of UFO lore. Walton has profited significantly from his story. He is a fixture at UFO conventions. In fact, if you go to a UFO convention, there is a very high chance that Travis Walton will be there telling his story and selling his shit. So Walton really has profited significantly from his story. He was paid by Hollywood for the rights to the story. He's got a book, documentaries, and more. His story, and he's profited through book sales, public appearances, live speaking engagements, and more. And despite ongoing skepticism and suggestions that the entire incident was a hoax or a publicity stunt, somehow Travis Walton maintains his lucrative career in the UFO community. It's important to note that one of the original witnesses to Travis Walton's story, his best friend, a few years ago, got upset because they were making a new deal for a movie and they did not cut that person, I believe his name was Mike Rogers, in on the money. Suddenly, Mike Rogers came out with a statement on Facebook saying, I no longer stand by Travis Walton's story. He then spoke with someone who I really don't trust as a researcher, but that person got recordings of that individual claiming that they hoaxed the entire event. Suddenly, Travis Walton had a big problem on his hands, but don't worry, friends. People like Jimmy Church came along to help him do damage control. And then apparently Travis Walton got right with his partner there with the money. And suddenly that individual retracted his claims that it was all a hoax and is still now backing up the story as true and not a hoax. I believe the story is a hoax, and there's some very important reasons for that. Chief among them is that Travis Walton failed several polygraph examinations. And I think that is incredibly important. And while people claim that his logging crew passed some polygraphs, the polygraphs that were passed were specific to, did you have anything to do with his disappearance? Did you murder him? Those were criminal investigation polygraphs. Those weren't polygraphs to determine the accuracy of Travis Walton's so-called abduction experience or sighting of a flying saucer. Further, his partner suggested how they hoaxed the event, and it may have been as stupid and simple as lighting up a fire watchtower in a nearby area to where they were logging. And that, my friends, we see these images of the so-called flying saucer that Travis Walton claims to have seen. If we look up fire watchtower, his partner claimed that there was a fire watchtower and the other individuals did not know about it. Now, the fire watchtower in question was one like this, with a great deal of glass windows. And one can contrast and compare the description of the craft and one of these fire watchtowers. Imagine that dark in the woods lit up from a distance. You might believe that that was indeed a flying saucer. So interesting that Travis Walton has made a career, and it's very controversial. Is it a hoax or is it a true story? Did his partner spill the beans because the money dried up, or is there something more to the story? To be honest, friends, your guess is as good as mine, but my gut, for what it's worth, tells me that Travis Walton is just another UFO profiteer in a large line of UFO profiteers. After all, he told his story to the National Enquirer at the time to win money. And he has been very profit-driven and focused on money. Now, I will say that people who, oh, look at that. Bob Dean doesn't even come up unless you do Bob Dean UFO. Here's the next contestant. Yeah, so if you know, people love to argue, is it true? Is it not true? It's just kind of ridiculous, right? I would tend to believe that if you failed polygraphs, including one on national television, then the story is fake. But it is what it is. People still love that story and claim it's a true story. Interesting that Travis Walton has made an entire career out of it, despite the controversy and claims of it being a complete and total hoax. But on to Bob Dean. Bob Dean was a former U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major who claimed to have had access to top secret documents revealing the existence of UFOs, flying saucers, and extraterrestrial beings. Dean's most famous claim was about the NATO document known as the, quote, assessment, unquote, which supposedly detailed interactions between humans and aliens and NATO. However, Dean never provided any tangible evidence to support his claims, relying instead on his status as a military insider to lend credibility to his stories. Despite the lack of proof, Dean became an incredibly popular figure on the UFO conference circuit. And for a time, if you went to a UFO convention, Bob Dean was at it and speaking at it. He has sold books and DVDs while perpetrating the myth of government UFO cover-ups. It's interesting to note that, you know, the government rarely calls bullshit on these people. But in this case, NATO, the Office of SHAPE, where he worked, called bullshit and said there was no document like he described. There was no document called the assessment. There was no documents, in fact, at all about aliens and UFOs. And it's interesting to note that Bob Dean was neighbors with another well-known UFO huckster, Wendell Stevens, the promoter of the Billy Meier hoax, who was a convicted child predator and spent time in jail for being a child predator. Bob Dean is not at all credible. And I believe that because Bob Dean started out, and by the way, feel free, go on YouTube and just put in Bob Dean UFO lecture. His early lectures are very convincing. He's a very charismatic speaker. He's got a good like radio voice, you know. He's kind of dressed all dapper, you know. He looks the part. And he's got an impressive military credential background, so people thought he was credible. But as his career in UFO land went on, Bob Dean decided that he had superpowers. That's right. He decided that he was a psychic and had psychic superpowers. Then he started talking about his past lives as all these famous individuals throughout history. And then before he died, he got as sensational as claiming that he was in direct daily contact with extraterrestrial aliens. But he provided zero evidence or proof of any of his claims, and most of his original claims have been debunked thoroughly as being works of fiction. Still, it's incredible to note that Bob Dean was still accepted and widely promoted and celebrated as a UFO whistleblower. Bob Dean was not a whistleblower. In my opinion, Bob Dean was a bullshitter. So on to the next contestant here, Clifford Stone, who's another of my favorites. And just as in the case of Bob Dean, when you get into Clifford Stone, if you listen to his very earliest meanderings and storytellings and, you know, sort of, you know, narratives, it seems pretty believable at first. But what we find out is that this guy was so full of shit, he waddled when he walked, right? He waddled instead of walked. He was so full of it. But Clifford Stone is an interesting case, though, because he's another self-proclaimed so-called whistleblower who claims to have been involved in the recovery of alien bodies and technologies while serving in the U.S. military. Clifford Stone alleged that he was part of a secret government team that interacted with extraterrestrials and retrieved crash UFOs. In fact, he named the project as Project Moondust, but what we do know from documents and history is that Project Moondust had nothing to do with aliens or UFOs. It was a crash retrieval team, but it was designed to pick up crashed adversarial technology. In other words, and we've detailed this Project Moondust. Project Moondust was about picking up our enemies' crashed goodies. In other words, if the Russians had a space flight go wrong and some space technology of theirs crashed in the middle of Africa, Project Moondust from the United States would go and pick that technology up. And this was, of course, to study and get an edge over our adversaries. Moondust had nothing to do with aliens or alien technology. And what we know from Clifford Stone's military records is that Clifford Stone is not who he claimed to be. He essentially claimed to be sort of a war hero and an important military figure, when the truth is he spent his entire time in the military in the secretariat pool. In other words, Clifford Stone was a secretary. That's what he did. You know, he typed letters, he filed files. I have done extensive research into his military background and was shocked and amazed to learn that much of what he talked about during his UFO talks was complete and total bunk. So his stories still have been widely circulated and even amplified in the UFO community, amplified by people like Dr. Stephen Greer. And like others in this circle, he has monetized his claims through books, interviews, speaking engagements, and more. However, there is no credible evidence to back up any of Stone's claims or assertions, and his accounts often rely on vague anecdotes and unverifiable sources, including anonymous ones. And just as in the case of Robert Dean, Clifford Stone, the longer he was speaking at UFO conferences, the more and more fantastic and sensational his stories got. At first, he simply claimed he was part of a crash retrieval program. Later, he would claim that not only was he part of a crash retrieval program, but he had psychic superpowers, and the government used him to communicate or interface with the alien beings on those crashed spaceships. Clifford Stone lived in Roswell, New Mexico, and perhaps that influenced his worldview and sensational claims. Also interesting to note that later in his so-called UFO career, he also claimed to have rescued alien beings from a facility where they were being kept against their will. Clifford Stone helped an alien escape from an alien containment facility and was reprimanded for it. But he was so valued for his psychic superpowers that he continued with the alien program, which, to be very honest, is just a stupid, just childish, stupid story. You mean to tell me that if the government really was holding an alien in a containment facility and this guy like busted the alien out, they wouldn't kill him or fire him? No, they would just let him keep talking to the aliens and picking up the crash retrievals. And it is by applying this kind of logic that we see how stupid, childish, and ridiculous and just nonsensical some of these people's stories are. They just don't even make any sense. And sadly, Clifford Stone passed away recently. And I remember that when he passed away, there was an outpouring of affection and respect and admiration for all he sacrificed to bring us the truth about those aliens. But the real truth is he didn't have any truth. What he had were bullshit stories with no evidence. And we can disprove many of his claims, including his claims about his military service. He was a secretary. That's what he did in the Army, and nothing more. Now, on to another of my favorites. And we're making good progress getting through this. But I'll take a moment. Anjali, UFO aliens. She's another one that's not. So, Anjali, who I am intimately familiar with. For those unaware, Anjali originally is a more recent figure in the UFO community who claimed to have had direct contact with claimed to have had contact with extraterrestrial beings in an underground base inside a tunnel in a mountain in the Mojave Desert. She alleged that these beings provided her with messages about the future of humanity, and that she was chosen to relay these messages to the world. Despite the outlandish nature of her claims and the lack of evidence, Anjali has gained a significant following and has appeared on Gaia TV. telling her original alien encounter story. But there's just one problem with this. We here investigated her claims. And again, she claimed that she met this mysterious person, Wayne. She went to his home where he had a mountain behind his home with a tunnel. She went through the tunnel and she encountered alien beings, multiple alien beings, and had this whole alien experience. Then she was teleported back to the house. There's just one problem. We found the so-called Wayne that she described in her original stories. We interviewed him here, and he said that Anjali was basically full of it and that none of that happened. And in fact, there was no tunnel. The tunnel that she described didn't exist. He joked about, digging a cave into the mountain, but he hadn't actually done that at the time she visited. So her entire original story was essentially fake, or at the very, giving her the benefit of the doubt of not being just a liar. Her original story may have been just a drug-influenced, hallucination. Because at first, she claimed that she was not on any drugs at all during her encounter. Later, during an interview, she admitted that she was on multiple drugs, including Rick Simpson oil, which is a very, very strong cannabis oil that can induce hallucinations. So interestingly, many people, besides myself, other researchers helped to debunk her original story. And even though her original story was completely proven to be 100% fake and false, she continued to go on podcasts and even on Gaia TV, telling her original story as if that tunnel existed. We proved that tunnel didn't exist. She made that part up. We proved that, she had claimed that the people whose home it was would corroborate her story. They not only didn't corroborate her story, they said that she is a lunatic, essentially, and they wish they had never met her. She put them through an awful lot, including, sort of outing them. They didn't want to be public figures. The person, Paul Blackwell, who was the real name of the so-called Wayne, came on our show just to tell his side of the story and try to put it behind him. And by the way, there's new parts to this story, which maybe we'll do a separate show about, sort of an update, because that person whose home it was decided to sell his home, and suddenly Anjali contacting them, trying to get a TV show deal, like a Skinwalker Ranch series based on the alien mountain behind his house that doesn't have any aliens or a tunnel. It's kind of ridiculous. So it's interesting to note also that Anjali is one of the many intelligence people that have found their way into, former intelligence people, to find their way into the UFO community. She worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency. I did a deep dive on her background, a full background check to check her claims. She indeed worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency, not once, but twice. And in both of those capacities, once as a direct employee and once as a subcontractor, Anjali worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency in information warfare. That's right. Anjali is an information warfare specialist, formerly of the Defense Intelligence Agency. So Anjali alleged that these beings she met in a tunnel that didn't exist provided her with messages about the future of humanity, and she was chosen to relay those messages to the world. And despite the outlandish nature of her claims and the fact that the tunnel didn't exist, Anjali is still attempting to be a UFO celebrity, some would say. She has gained a significant following and appeared on UFO podcasts and Gaia TV to share her original story, which I again remind you is completely and totally fake. Her rise in the UFO community really does demonstrate how easily new figures can emerge and profit from unverifiable tales of alien contact. And just another note, because I think this is funny. Here, Charlie Weiser, who was one of the researchers who helped to bust the story is fake, says, and here you are calling yourself a thought leader. What exactly are you consciously aware of, Anjali? Smear campaigns on people who point out your continuity errors and plot holes. P.S. There is no tunnel. You were high? P.S. There is no tunnel. You were high. She calls herself on her Twitter profile consciousness awareness thought leader, soft disclosure advocacy of non-human intelligence on Earth. It's really, it gets pretty deep, friends. And I'm going to share with you a short. 1 second. I'm going to try. Oh, man, this is tough. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I got it. I'll share this tab. So this is her on my show being confronted with the absolute 100% verifiable proof that there was no tunnel and that she made up a great part of her story.
And again, I get that you believe that you had a genuine experience, but when we get to the part where there's no tunnel, Anjali, there's no tunnel entrance. There's no big archway in his house that's a teleportation machine. There's no human-looking aliens that anybody else saw. There's no gray aliens anybody else saw. There's no purple mantis being that everybody else saw.
Did you want to tell me what happened, or did you want me to talk? I don't understand what...
I'm just trying to get to this. It's like, isn't that important detail? That doesn't exist. None of that exists except in your imagination, Anjali. None of that exists.
Okay, then we're done. If you're just going to yell at me...
I can't. I'm just trying to get to this. Isn't this relevant that none of that exists? Let's both take a step back. You're right. We both get too passionate about this. And I love a passionate woman, Anjali. So I apologize. So...
And so she dropped from the show. She stormed off the show because I was confronting her with the reality that her entire story that she originally told was completely and totally fake. Really kind of sad. It makes me sad thinking about her story because I think she truly believed that she had a real alien experience, but she was on like 4 or 5 drugs at the time. It's really not a good idea to change your whole life after having an alien experience if you were on a bunch of drugs at the time, And by the way, I just want to put this out there. If you are a person that like eats mushrooms and sees aliens, please don't email me. If you're going to eat mushrooms, you might see some aliens. I don't believe that that's a genuine alien experience that you need to send me a 10-page letter about, but people do that. And that's one of the sad parts of my job is some of these people are very genuine in their belief, but come on, yeah. We're gonna stop my screen for a moment here. I kind of got lost. Muppet Pimpin' again with another kind and generous $10. We take a moment to thank you for your kindness. And we've got Larry Love with another one. A counterintelligence agent countering people's intelligence. The money op is the perfect heist. I can't say I disagree with you, Larry Love. Thanks for your kindness. And we've got Jimmy Chaichowski, who says, which researchers on the topic do you endorse? Like I said, I can count them on one hand. I like Jeremy Rye's alien scientist. We disagree on many things, but that guy's very thorough when he investigates or looks into something. I like John from the Black Vault. And again, he and I probably disagree on many, many things. I like Mick West, but I disagree with Mick West on some things, of course. I like Stephen Greenstreet, and I'm sure there's a few others that do good work, but we thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. You're right. It's easier for me to tell you who I do think does good work. It's very few people are reporting accurately. And remember, Jimmy, there is a truth tax. If you just want to promote sensational fake stories, you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars doing this. However, if you seriously investigate and then share findings, even if those findings say, hey, these people are full of it, their stories are fake, you pay a truth tax and you're going to make 1%, maybe 10% of what the fantastic people. I think, there are some skeptics too, like Brian Dunning and Michael Shermer, who do a good job. I tend to listen more to skeptics than to the True Believer channels. But then, there are some other people that I think, we may be adding to the list, but I'm going to save them for a time when we have them as a guest. But I thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. And we'll take a moment to recognize all you kind and generous Patreon supporters and PayPal pledgers, Buy Me a Coffee people, and YouTube channel members. Thank you all for your support. We're a viewer-supported show. We're here because of people like you. We read every single super chat. We thank every single person. I have an attitude of gratitude. I'm so happy for the support to be able to continue doing this. Thank you all.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right, and we're going to continue in our journey. Actually, the Anjali story makes me sad because what a saga. That was a big part of our early history of our show. And, this woman really did manipulate me for like months and months. So people got mad at me because I raised my voice to her. I just want to put that on the record. That was out of frustration of being manipulated by this woman while investigating her story for like 6 months. She did everything she could to try to stop me and the other researchers from finding this Wayne. We found him anyway, because I knew that was the key to deciding whether her story was true or false. And so we're going to move on to another of my favorite, another David Wilcock so-called insider that wasn't, right? If David Wilcock says this person is an insider, they're fake. David Wilcock only has fake insiders. So I'm going to share my screen just so we get an image in case you're unfamiliar with him. Okay, so Emery Smith is a former surgical assistant who claims to have worked on alien autopsies for the U.S. government. Emery Smith later walked his original story back and decided, no, I didn't autopsy 3,000 alien bodies. I examined 3,000 alien tissue samples. Smith's stories include having dissected hundreds of alien bodies and having access to advanced extraterrestrial technology. Despite offering zero actual evidence to support these claims, Smith became a popular figure in the UFO community and even got to be a show host on Gaia TV, taking over for David Wilcock after David Wilcock left Gaia TV and the show Cosmic Disclosure. He appears in many documentaries and on YouTube channels that promote UFO disclosure narratives. Smith claims follow a similar pattern of mixing outlandish stories with just enough plausible details to make them appealing to believers, all while profiting from book sales, speaking engagements, online content, and a bizarre subscription service where you can pay him to listen to him rant while drinking. And interestingly, Emery Smith claimed that at one point he was under attack by the deep state. And David Wilcock still has a blog post about that, claiming that Emery Smith was under deep state attack. But big problem for Emery Smith. His former, I suppose you could call him former father-in-law of sorts, his live-in girlfriend had a father who was intimately aware of Emery Smith's grifting and started a YouTube channel called Points on the Curve and blew the whistle that Emery Smith was not in the hospital because he was under deep state attack. He was in the hospital because he was actually attacked by a bottle of vodka. He had alcohol poisoning. So David Wilcock and Emery Smith lied to the UFO community and apparently collected something like $50,000 in donations for his deep state attack while in the hospital. But it turns out he was in the hospital because he drank too much vodka. Emery Smith is a tragic character because he also got caught lying through his teeth to a poor girl, to essentially telling her that, the aliens said that we should have a baby together. I suppose so he could bareback bang her. And he did bareback bang that girl, but eventually she woke up. That we did a whole series on this. It's Emery Smith's former fiance exposes Emery. You can find it in our archive. Really sad story, and apparently that detailed that Emery Smith has a terrible drinking problem, as many of these people do. Many of these people that we're talking about tonight have terrible drug and alcohol problems. And I believe that is because they are trying to self-medicate themselves from lying to people every day to make a living. Emery Smith's really story is a cautionary tale about how anybody with a good story can make a great deal of money and even become a television show host based on zero evidence whatsoever. Many of Emery Smith's claims have been completely debunked as false, yet he remains a central figure on Gaia TV and at UFO conferences. Next, on to Richard Doty. Richard Doty is a former Air Force Office of Special Investigations, or AFOSI officer, who played a pivotal, some would say key role in some of the most notorious disinformation campaigns in UFO history. Doty has literally admitted to spreading completely fake information about UFOs to individuals like Linda Moulton Howe, but also most notably Paul Bennewitz. The Bennewitz case is famous. In the case of Paul Bennewitz, Richard Doty led Paul Bennewitz to believe in a vast government cover-up of extraterrestrial activity. Doty's actions contributed to Bennewitz's mental breakdown, and he had to be hospitalized. And yet Doty remains a prominent figure in the UFO community. Interesting that he's often portrayed as a whistleblower rather than what he admitted to be is a government disinformation agent, a paid government disinformation agent. Richard Doty's involvement in these campaigns highlights the darker side of the UFO industry, where disinformation is used to manipulate people and to exploit those who are already predisposed to believe in such conspiracy theories. It's interesting to note that a great deal of UFO mythology or stories that are accepted as true in fact actually came from Richard Doty, who again is an admitted paid government disinformation agent. In the case of the Bennewitz case, he was purposefully misinforming Bennewitz because Bennewitz was actually seeing early unmanned aerial systems, UAS systems, or drones. The government was testing these unmanned aerial systems right near Paul Bennewitz's home. Paul Bennewitz began filming them and believed that they were alien in nature. In order to cover the reality of this black technology they were developing, it is believed that Richard Doty was employed by the United States government to go to Bennewitz and throw him off the trail of human-made black technology projects and convince him that what he was seeing was aliens. And he did so very convincingly. Interestingly, Paul Bennewitz literally went crazy from all of the conspiracy theories and supposedly genuine government documents and alien secrets that Richard Doty was sharing with Paul Bennewitz. But it was all a psychological operation designed to cover for these early UAS or UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles, unmanned aerial systems that were being developed by the United States military. And as I said, a great deal of UFO mythology came directly from the Paul Bennewitz case. If you've ever heard of Dulce Base and those experiments that are supposedly taking place inside a mountain with alien hybrids and all that stuff, that was part of the disinformation campaign that was waged against Paul Bennewitz. They even went so far as to set things up on Dulce Mountain, and Paul Bennewitz, they flew him over and showed him, oh, that's an alien spacecraft. And right now they're down inside of the base, but they're going to come up out of the base and take off, and all of these other sensational stories. Richard Doty literally drove a man crazy with alien disinformation. But somehow he's regarded as a hero now in the UFO community. And you too can join a Twitter space where this admitted paid government disinformation agent will tell you all about the truth about aliens. And isn't it interesting that he's also, like Emery Smith, on Gaia TV, where he talks about the reality of the reptilians controlling the world and all of this other nonsense. But back to the UFO mythology. If you've heard the story of the Serpo files, which reads, not coincidentally, I think, exactly like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There's an alien story that was floated on the internet about an exchange program between Earth and an alien civilization. Interestingly, as detailed in the excellent documentary, one of my favorite documentaries, Mirage Men, Richard Doty got caught distributing the Serpo files from his home computer. They have him dead to rights by IP. The fake email address that was sending out the Serpo files matched the IP of his known home computer and his known real email address. So what is it with Richard Doty? I have had several conversations and interaction with Richard Doty, and while I agree he's kind of a likable, affable fellow, I think he's extremely dangerous, and I think that Richard Doty gets a kick out of manipulating the UFO community and creating fake things and seeing what happens. He has been the originator of the Dulce base mythology. He's been the originator of the Serpo mythology. Some people believe that he's also the originator, and there's some evidence to support this. He's the originator of the so-called MJ-12 documents, which detail a government organization that was started after Roswell to cover up the visitation of aliens and get those crashed flying saucers and study the technology. The MJ-12 documents are an enduring part of the UFO community, despite there being an incredible, I think overwhelming amount of evidence that those files are fake. Richard Doty, to be clear and fair to him, has denied any involvement in the MJ-12 documents. And when I interviewed him, I pressed him on this Serpo, and he still denied that those Serpo files came from his home computer. But in the same interview, he detailed and was like a giddy schoolchild, and he detailed how much fun he had messing with Linda Moulton Howe and feeding her fake government documents that were fake. There's a famous story where he called her in to the office and he sat her in a room, they recorded her, and he let her read some fake briefing documents. I think that it's clear, at least to this reporter, that Richard Doty gets a sick, perverse thrill out of messing with the UFO community, out of creating stories like Dulce Base or the Serpo files. And maybe someday Richard Doty will come clean about all of the UFO mythology that he has injected into the UFO community, because so much of what UFO believers believe, I believe, came directly from Richard Doty. He is the originator of many of these stories. And isn't it interesting in that even though he is an admitted paid government disinformation agent and has been caught dead to rights distributing these fake stories, people still believe those stories are true. You could still find people promoting Dulce Base stories. You could still find people promoting the Serpo files. And you could certainly still find people promoting the MJ-12 documents. Isn't that interesting? All right, we're almost through this. Our next contestant, this takes an even darker turn than Richard Doty. And as I said, I'm not presenting these in any order, so pardon my disorganization, but it's very hard. I thought about doing them in chronological order, but then I couldn't get some of the dates right. And if you can't get the dates right and accurate, that becomes extremely difficult. So, friends, on to Stan Romanek. Romanek was once a rising star in the UFO community, known for his claims of repeated alien abductions and encounters, which he documented in books and videos. Romanek's most famous claim was the so-called Boo video, which supposedly showed an alien peering into his window. Despite being widely debunked and people even finding the mask he used on eBay, Romanek's stories gained him a significant following among UFO believers, and he profited from his books, lectures, and the documentary Extraordinary, the Stan Romanek Story. However, and this is where it gets really dark, Romanek's public persona came crashing down in 2014 when he was arrested and later convicted for possession of child pornography. The conviction shattered his credibility, but disturbingly, some in the UFO community continued to defend him, claiming that the charges were part of a government conspiracy to silence him. Romanek has been caught hoaxing several things, including hoaxing a telekinetic event in which a pen flew off his desk, but he didn't realize that the camera showed that he clearly threw the pen. Romanek's case is a stark reminder of the moral and ethical failures within the UFO community, where belief in sensational stories outweighs concern for real-world crimes. And by the way, the company that produced this kitty porn collectors documentary is still promoting and profiting from it. And UFO celebrities are still working for that company that is right now still promoting and profiting from this guy's fake story. And again, he was convicted for child-related offenses, which is despicable and teaches you something about the lack of any kind of morality and ethics within the UFO community. The rule is, if you can make a buck, run with it. Who cares if it involves child predators, right? It's really, really despicable. And next we get even more despicable because, and I'm sorry that we're taking a really dark turn here, but we have to display just how disgusting and despicable the UFO community can be sometimes. We'll talk about Billy Meier and Wendell Stevens. And yeah, that's not really a real book. Oh, so here's a picture of the two of them together. That's perfect. Okay, so Billy Meier and Wendell Stevens, A Sinister Partnership is what I titled it. Billy Meier is a Swiss farmer who claims to have direct contact with extraterrestrials from the Pleiades star system since the 1940s. Meier's stories include detailed accounts of his interaction with these beings, as well as photographs and videos of their spacecraft. However, Meier's evidence have been widely debunked. They've been debunked out the wazoo, with many of his photos being exposed as complete and total hoaxes involving models and doctors' images. In one famous case, he made a model of a flying saucer out of a trash can lid, and people were able to find that trash can lid common in the area he lives in and show that indeed his so-called alien it's just so stupid. His so-called alien flying saucers were actually models made out of trash can lids common to the area where he lived. Despite this, Meier's claims were heavily promoted by Wendell Stevens, a retired U.S. Air Force pilot who became one of Meier's biggest advocates. Stevens published books and documentaries supporting Meier's alien claims and helped build a cult-like following around the Swiss farmer. However, Stevens' reputation was permanently tarnished when he was convicted of child-related offenses in 1987. The connection between Meier and Stevens highlights the troubling moral landscape of the UFO industry, where even those with criminal backgrounds involving the molestation of children can still become influential figures and be accepted at UFO conventions. It's important to note that even after Wendell Stevens' conviction and jail sentence, once he returned from his jail sentence for being a child predator, he once again got work in the UFO industry, becoming a speaker at many, many UFO conventions. And it is believed, or it's been told to me by multiple sources, that the organizers of these UFO conventions knew about his conviction for those child-related offenses, but made excuses and came up with conspiracies like, oh, the CIA framed him in order to silence him because he was getting too close to the truth about UFOs. Never mind the fact that the only truth about UFOs he was promoting came from Billy Meier, who was making flying saucer models out of trash can lids and hanging them from strings from trees. It's a completely and totally ridiculous story. And the Wendell Stevens story, especially the part where the UFO community knew that he was a convicted child predator, but welcomed him with open arms at UFO conferences anyway, shows you what kind of the morality and the ethics of the people involved in the UFO community and how willing they are to forgive even something like somebody being a child predator if somebody is going to be profitable for them. And by all accounts, Wendell Stevens was a popular and profitable figure in the UFO community. Next, we'll move on to a more recent person, and that would be John Ramirez, CIA UFO. I'm going to have to do that to get, yeah. And here, this is coverage that we did. Anjali, John Ramirez, and the CIA circus. So, John Ramirez is a former CIA officer who has recently gained attention in the UFO community for his claims about government knowledge of extraterrestrial beings. Ramirez alleges that the United States government has been in contact with alien species for decades, and that a disclosure event is imminent. And despite these sensational claims, Ramirez has provided no concrete evidence to back them up, relying instead on his former intelligence background to lend credibility to his stories. Like many in the UFO community, Ramirez has leveraged his claims to gain a big following, appearing on podcasts and I believe also at conferences where he shares his unverified evidence-free stories. His stories follow a similar pattern of blending military service intelligence with extraordinary claims and are designed to captivate and profit from a gullible audience. He is one of the many people, like I mentioned, Anjali is a former Defense Intelligence Agency information warfare specialist. John Ramirez is a former CIA person. So there is an infiltration of former military intelligence people and CIA people into the UFO community. And I've said this before, if this has been happening in any other area, like imagine if a bunch of CIA and intelligence people just start infiltrating like the comic book community. You know, like people would go, whoa, what's going on here? But this is just normal here somehow in the world of UFOs. Next, we get to Randy Kramer, one of my favorite secret space bullshitters. We've covered him extensively too. Randy Kramer, also known as Captain Randy Kramer, claims to have served as a Marine in a secret space program where he spent 17 years on Mars protecting human colonies from indigenous Martian life forms, including insectoid aliens. Kramer's tale is a classic example of the so-called 20 and back or secret space narratives, where individuals claim to have served in the secret space program and then had their memories erased or altered before being returned to their normal lives. These stories are often filled with science fiction elements borrowed from popular movies, comic books, television, and even video games. And as often, and especially in the case of Randy Kramer, lack any credible evidence whatsoever. But despite this, Randy Kramer still gained a following and profited a great deal through appearances at UFO conferences, on Gaia TV, and podcast interviews where he details his supposed alien experiences. His claims have been widely dismissed by skeptics as pure fantasy, but they continue to attract attention for those who want to believe. And interestingly, we covered him here because he was running a really absolutely ridiculous medbed scam. And in that medbed scam, he was raising money and donations, and he was going to create medbeds where you could regrow a limb in as little as a couple of hours, and it cured cancer, and it even cured childhood autism, which I had a real problem with, knowing that I have an autistic son. Offering hope to the hopeless is the way that scammers scam. And we went after him for that. And interestingly, he tried to scrub all of the medbed GoFundMes and things like that and fundraising for his medbed scam. And interestingly, next he pivoted to a superpower scam in which you could sign up for his website for $99 a month and learn to have superpowers. That's right. Randy Kramer claimed to have superpowers. And for just $99 a month, he would teach you to have superpowers too. I'm not sure what happened with that, but shortly after our coverage of what a scam the superpower scam was, he scrubbed his website from the internet and has been relatively quiet. I haven't heard much about him in recent days. I'm not sure, or recent years, I should say. Not sure if he's still scamming and grifting, but likely so. These guys don't suddenly wake up one day and just get a day job and stop with the alien grift. I guess the money's too good. Next, we get to Richard Hoagland, who David Wilcock has been heavily citing and promoting recently. Hoagland is a former NASA consultant and a science writer, one-time science writer, who essentially went headlong into fake pseudoscience for money. He became a prominent figure in the UFO and alternative science communities. Richard Hoagland is best known for his promotion of the so-called Face on Mars, a rock formation in the Cydonia region of Mars that he claimed was evidence of an ancient Martian civilization. Despite more detailed images from later missions proving the face to be nothing more than a natural formation, Hoagland continues to promote theories about ancient extraterrestrial civilizations, pyramids on Mars built by ancient alien civilizations, and government cover-ups. He's written several books and runs a website where he sells his ideas and products, profiting from the continued interest in Mars and UFO-related mysteries. Hoagland's work is often criticized for its lack of scientific rigor, lack of evidence, and reliance on purely speculative connections. But he still remains a popular figure in the fringe science community. And I just wanted to say that somebody that I know is very familiar or friendly with Richard Hoagland and asked me if I'd be interested in interviewing him. Sure, I would. And I'd be very respectful, but I would challenge many of his, I believe, false claims. So if that person who offered to make that connection is listening, sure, I would be happy to interview him. I was fascinated by the face on Mars when it first came out, but as soon as we got the new images, updated images that showed it wasn't what it seemed to be, it was a trick of light and shadow. It's a natural formation. It's not a face. It's not man-made or alien-made. It's just a bunch of rocks. Interestingly, Richard Hoagland would go on to claim that there was a whole complex of pyramids on Mars in the so-called Cydonia region. I believe that is false too. It's pareidolia. You know, if you look at a shape long enough, you're going to begin to see something in that shape. I'm aware that Richard Hoagland is still doing a podcast and making a full-time living selling his wares. You know, I'm more than willing to talk to him and let him try to convince me. But to be very honest, I'm very skeptical of, you know, especially because even after it was proven that the face of Mars wasn't what it looked like, he doubled down and said, oh, they're lying. They covered it up. And, you know, and he just extrapolated 3D data that didn't exist to make more and more fantastical claims about this really being a face and a government cover up. I would have had much more respect for him if he just went, okay, I got that one wrong, and moved on to something else, I suppose. So we're going to move on to one of my favorite Skinwalker scammers, and that would be Travis Taylor. I'm just going to put Travis Taylor UFO so we get the right guy there. Great. So Travis Taylor is an aerospace engineer and television personality who has appeared on several UFO-themed shows, including Ancient Aliens and The Secret of the Skinwalker Ranch. And while Taylor does have a legitimate scientific background and education and credentials, his participation on these shows has raised eyebrows among skeptics. On The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, Taylor presents himself as a serious investigator of paranormal phenomenon, but the show is heavily criticized for its lack of scientific methodology and its sensationalist approach to the subject matter. Taylor's involvement lends an air of credibility since he is a real, educated, credentialed scientist. He lends an air of credibility to what is essentially just entertainment content designed to capitalize on the public's fascination with UFOs and the paranormal. His participation in these programs demonstrates how even those with scientific backgrounds can become complicit in promoting dubious claims for profit. And staying on the subject of, my wife calls this guy Hair Guy, staying on the subject of Ancient Aliens, we're going to talk for a moment about Giorgio, is it Tsoukalos? Is that how you say his name? I think so. And my wife calls him the Hair Guy. And she's like, why did his hair keep getting crazier and crazier as that show went on? I guess it became his trademark, kind of like mine is the shades. Giorgio Tsoukalos, perhaps best known as the wild-hair host of Ancient Aliens, a popular television series that explores the idea that extraterrestrials visited Earth in ancient times and influenced human history. Tsoukalos, a proponent of the ancient astronaut theory, presents a variety of artifacts, myths, and historical events as evidence of alien involvement. And despite of a lack of credible support from mainstream archaeology, science, or history, his catchphrase, "I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens," has become a meme, and his outlandish claims, as well as his outlandish hair, have turned him into a pop culture figure. Despite the entertainment value, Tsoukalos' work perpetrates extreme pseudoscience and real historical inaccuracies, all while generating a huge amount of revenue for himself and the producers of Ancient Aliens. I have discussed this in deep detail. The Ancient Aliens theory is based on mostly based on very flawed translations of some ancient tablets by Zecharia Sitchin, who had no education and mistranslated those things. And they also play fast and loose with the facts to make things fit their narrative. They've been caught faking evidence, manufacturing evidence. And one of my favorite cases is the cases of the Vimanas, where they will claim that there exists ancient Hindu texts which describe these flying machines in detail, including how they work. But they forget to tell you that that's not really an ancient Hindu text. It was a channeled book from the 1950s with those pretty pictures of what look like flying saucers that they're showing you. I think Ancient Aliens theory is thoroughly debunked as false. Although when I was growing up, hey, I read Chariots of the Gods and I was enthralled by it at first, being a sort of Catholic that was looking for answers that Catholicism did not quite answer. For a time, I thought that the Ancient Aliens theory might have been correct, but I have since changed my opinion, having been better educated about the amount of deception and manipulation they use to sell a really flawed false theory. Also of note, Ancient Aliens theory essentially takes away all credit from humanity, essentially claiming that human beings are too dumb to have done anything impressive in the ancient world, so it must have come from aliens. And I find that a very defeatist attitude, and it's very disrespectful to the sometimes very ingenious ancient humans on Earth. Next, on to Dr. Eric Davis, a physicist who has been involved in various UFO-related projects, including work with the National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDS, and also Bob Bigelow's organizations, which studied Skinwalker Ranch. Davis is best known for his involvement in the infamous Davis-Wilson memo, a document that purportedly details a conversation between Davis and a former Admiral Thomas Wilson about secret UFO programs. The memo has been widely circulated in the UFO community as evidence of a government cover-up, but its authenticity and the veracity of its claims have been heavily disputed. In fact, Admiral Thomas Wilson, as I said earlier, has called these notes a work of fiction. Davis has not provided any verifiable evidence to support his assertions, yet he continues to be a somehow respected figure within UFO circles. He profits from his association with high-profile UFO projects, and his reputation as a credible scientist in a field dominated by less credible figures. However, it should be noted that Eric Davis is a wackadoo who believes that, like, poltergeists followed him home from Skinwalker Ranch. And I guess he believes in the werewolves at Skinwalker Ranch and other ridiculous things. This is not these are not things that a scientist believes. He's also famous for creating some of these, papers on theoretical physics and wormholes. And in one of them, it shows a drawing of Einstein waving to Barney the dinosaur through a wormhole. It's really ridiculous. And his research has been called crackpot research by the United States Air Force. Eric Davis is a controversial figure. And he's always injecting himself into the conversation, as he did recently when he claimed that Lue Elizondo never worked for ATIP or OSAP, when he previously claimed that Lue Elizondo was the director of ATIP. So who knows? Next, on to one of my favorite UFO grifters, because this guy was a pure fraudster, and we have proof of that. Sean David Morton is a one-time UFO and alien expert, a self-proclaimed UFO and alien expert. He's also a self-proclaimed psychic and UFO researcher who's been involved in the UFO community for decades. Morton gained attention in the 1990s with his predictions about earthquakes and economic events, many of which, or most of which, turned out to be false predictions. He has also promoted various conspiracy theories related to UFOs and government cover-ups, including popularizing the idea that aliens are being housed and alien bodies and spaceships are being housed and studied at Area 51. This, of course, led to him building a following and making money through book sales, seminars, and radio appearances. Morton's career, however, took a much darker turn when he was convicted of major fraud in 2017. Sean David Morton, along with his wife, was found guilty of defrauding investors out of millions of dollars through a scheme involving fake investment opportunities. It's important to note that most or many of the victims of this scam were senior citizens. Morton was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison for his crimes. And despite his fraudulent activities, Morton is making a resurgence on the UFO community. He remains a controversial figure in the UFO community, but many people, again, we keep coming back to this. Every time one of these guys gets popped and sent to prison, people in the UFO community claim that the CIA did that because they were getting too close to the truth about aliens. And where some still regard him as a credible source of information, his major fraud case, it was a federal fraud case. That fraud case underscores the danger of allowing con artists to operate unchecked in the UFO and conspiracy theory communities, where they can cause real financial harm to their followers. So, wow, we're almost done. Amazing. So we're going to do a quick wrap up here. A quick wrap up of our presentation tonight, the architects of the alien deception. One moment here. I also just want to mention that if somebody is convicted of defrauding a bunch of grandmoms out of millions of dollars, I don't know, call me kooky, but maybe they shouldn't be welcome here anymore in the UFO community. Maybe people shouldn't book them on their podcasts or their shows or invite them to UFO conferences to speak for, good money. Maybe, just maybe, the UFO community ought to start policing itself and get these criminals and fraudsters out of the UFO community. But it's interesting that one of my friends, we were talking about this very thing, and I said, the UFO community needs to start policing itself and getting all these scammers, fraudsters, and grifters out of this. And then he said, but Stephen, then there'd be almost no one left. And I truly believe that, having reflected on it. But in the end, I think there should be some call for accountability. After all, the individuals mentioned in tonight's broadcast represent just a fraction of the many figures in the UFO and alien industry who have profited provably from deception, misinformation, and outright lies and fake stories. Their stories, while captivating to some, are often built on a foundation of hoaxes, exploitation, and completely and totally immoral and unethical behavior. From Travis Walton's dubious abduction tale to the sinister activities of Stan Romanek and Wendell Stevens when it comes to children, the UFO industry is riddled with examples of people who have manipulated the truth for personal gain. The UFO community's willingness to overlook or excuse the immoral, unethical, and at times completely and totally illegal actions of its leading figures is a testament to the powerful grip that sensationalism and belief can have on people. It's essential for those interested in the subject to approach these stories with a critical eye and demand accountability from those who would spread falsehoods for pure profit. Only by exposing these charlatans, grifters, scammers, and con artists, and holding them responsible for their actions, can we hope to bring integrity, if ever, to the study of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. So the individuals and groups that we mentioned, tonight, or individuals that we mentioned, I had a section on groups, which we're going to skip over for now. The individuals mentioned tonight represent a cross-section of a much larger industry built on sensationalism and complete and total deception. UFO conferences, books, documentaries, and online content are all part of a profit-driven ecosystem where the truth is often secondary to the bottom line. The lack of ethics or even a basic morality in this industry is truly disappointing and even staggering to me when I think about it in total. Many of these UFO and alien promoters are fully aware that their stories are either unsubstantiated, evidence-free, or just outright fabrications, yet they continue to sell them to the public eager for answers. The media plays a crucial role in perpetuating these stories. After all, sensational headlines about UFOs and aliens drive an incredible amount of traffic, which in turn generates ad revenue. This creates a cycle where the most outrageous claims are given the most attention, regardless of their veracity or truthfulness. Less than credible news outlets, in particular, are guilty of spreading this form of misinformation and giving platforms to less than credible individuals who should be scrutinized rather than celebrated. Finally, just a note on consumer fraud, because I have thought a great deal about this. In any other area, if you get caught lying to the public claiming something is true, there are consequences. Yet, people get caught constantly in the UFO community selling 100% provably fake stories, verifiably 100% fake stories. And yet there's never any accountability, even, legal or otherwise. There's just no accountability. The actions of these individuals and media outlets raise serious questions about consumer fraud and perhaps the need for new legislation around these issues. By selling books, courses, and other materials that are supposed to be true but are actually based on false or unverified evidence-free claims, they are effectively deceiving the public for pure financial gain. In any other industry, this would be grounds for legal action. Yet the UFO and alien industry operates with little to no oversight. And this lack of accountability allows this culture of conning, grifting, and scamming people for money to continue indefinitely. All right, friends. Wow, 2 hours, 32 minutes. Okay, we have reached the end. So I'll be taking some comments and questions from the live chat, but we are going to do something we haven't done in quite some time and take a musical break. For those unaware, we have often used a musical guest, and tonight we're going to be playing a Simon Fly classic, which we haven't played in some time, and that would be a David Grusch, We Have Spacecraft, if I could find it. Oh no, you know what? We're going to play The Death of UFO Transparency. It's a little bit longer. My throat needs a bit of a break. I'll be back. I want to make sure that you understand this is not the end of the show. I'm coming back and I will be taking all of your comments and questions in the live chat. If you have comments or questions for me that you'd like me to share on the screen and talk about or answer your questions, just please put them in all capital letters. It really does help as I am visually impaired. So let me take a moment to get a drink here and try to rest my throat. We'll be back in just a moment.
For the masses. Lue Elizondo. For the masses. Lue Elizondo. For the masses. Yeah.
trouble shows, good trouble shows, good trouble shows, good trouble shows.
For
The Soul Foundation. The Soul Foundation.
For
We grifters, we grifters, grifters. We grifters, we grifters, grifters.
For the masses.
We the people have to come together. We the people have to come together.
For the masses.
We the people have to come together. We the people have to come together.
Hi, everyone, here and around the world. Tall, white, Nordic, tall, white, Nordic. Hi, everyone, here and around the world. Tall, white, Nordic, tall, white, Nordic. The tall, white extraterrestrials. Nordic, the tall, white extraterrestrials. Nordic, the tall, white extraterrestrials. Nordic, tall, white, Nordic, tall, white, Nordic.
UFO disclosure. UFO craft and bodies. UFO disclosure. UFO craft and bodies. UFO disclosure. UFO craft and bodies. UFO disclosure. UFO craft and bodies.
People who might not buy everything you're saying, who are skeptics, have said over and over again, he has no first-hand knowledge. He has no first-hand knowledge. Maybe we shouldn't believe you. When you say you have first-hand knowledge, maybe we shouldn't believe you.
Legally, the fact that we're not alone. We've recovered material and we've recovered documents. And beyond that, the fact that we're not alone. We've recovered material and we've recovered documents. And beyond that, ontologically shocking but also uniting. Any evidence. Ontologically shocking but also uniting. Any evidence.
I'm an intel guy.
Ontologically shocking but also uniting. Any evidence. Ontologically shocking but also uniting. Any evidence.
I'm an intel guy.
Daniel P. Sheehan, classified. Daniel P. Sheehan, classified. Daniel P. Sheehan, classified. Daniel P. Sheehan, classified.
Crash retrieval operation. Psychological phenomenon. Crash retrieval operation. Psychological phenomenon.
The death of UFO transparency. The death of UFO transparency. The death of UFO transparency. The death of UFO transparency.
For the masses. Masses.
Ontologically shocking but also uniting. Ontologically shocking but also uniting. Ontologically shocking but also uniting. Ontologically shocking but also uniting.
Death of UFO transparency. The death of UFO transparency. The death of UFO transparency. The death of UFO transparency.
All right. And just a point of clarification, because Muppet Pimpin is tweeting at me about the Rick Simpson oil. I had stated that I believe that Anjali's alien experience may have been part of a drug-fueled hallucination. But it should be noted that Anjali first claimed she wasn't on any drugs at all during her alien experience. Later, she clarified that she was on, I believe, to the best of my memory, some 4 different prescription medications, including a sleep medication, an antipsychotic medication, an anti-anxiety medication, maybe an ADD medication. And then she also was heavily, this is her friend's word, not mine, heavily dosed with 2 large doses of this Rick Simpson oil. I'm incredibly interested in the Rick Simpson oil, not very well educated. So if I misspoke when I said that she may have been hallucinating, it wasn't just due, my belief and speculation on that is not just due to the Rick Simpson oil. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but Rick Simpson oil has been shown to have many positive effects on people. So do not be afraid of it because you think it may cause you to hallucinate. However, you can just Google, can Rick Simpson oil make you hallucinate, and get more information about that. I did not mean to disparage the use of Rick Simpson oil. I've heard from many people in my audience about, their personal positive experiences. But here's what I will say due to the YouTube situation: never take advice from me. Go to your healthcare professional. Your healthcare professional is who you should be asking questions about any medication you choose to ingest, cannabis or otherwise. Don't get medical advice from a YouTuber like me who has no medical training or expertise. When I said that I believe that Anjali may have had hallucinations based on her intake of all these different drugs, it's just an educated guess. There was many people in our live chat who agreed with me that if you're on all these different drugs and then you take a big dose of any, a very high potent dose of THC infused cannabis, you might experience, some detrimental effects or some form of hallucination. It was just speculation on my part. Don't mean to disparage the use of that. There are a great deal of, well, I don't want to say too much, except to say that I'm very interested in this Rick Simpson oil and its possible therapeutic uses. Some of you are aware that I once experienced a life-threatening brain aneurysm. I almost died from a brain injury. I spent many, many months in the hospital. I had multiple brain surgeries, I think 4, to coil and repair the aneurysm, which is right behind my eye. It left me with a paralyzed eye. And after the brain surgeries, they gave me OxyContin, and I couldn't function on it. And I don't want to get too personal, but I believe that medical cannabis is sometimes a much better solution than any sort of opiates. That's just my personal experience, though. Again, don't get medical advice from me. I think that you really need to consult a healthcare professional when it comes to these things. So I would appreciate it if you do that. We're not here to give you medical advice. I'm just recounting my own personal experience. However, I believe that medical cannabis has a great deal of benefits to some people, especially people who are experiencing chronic pain, because as soon as medical cannabis became legal in my state, I tried it and was surprised at the effects. It dealt with the nerve damage and pain from my brain aneurysm and my paralyzed eye, and I don't have to take any opiate-based painkillers. And certainly, I think that's a benefit to my life and my body, But again, this is my personal experience. Don't get your medical advice here. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset anybody. I'm certainly not disparaging the use of any form of cannabis. I'm a big supporter of that. In fact, I have an upcoming show on medical cannabis and the medical cannabis industry. Yeah, you may be right, Pat S. It alters your state of awareness, thus reducing pain. Perhaps, yeah. Aliens Are Sus says, 9 out of 10 users experience a purple Wilcock when stoned. Somebody asked earlier about my shirt. Seems to be no signs of intelligent life anywhere. This is a gift, an anniversary gift from my wife. Today is our 15th wedding anniversary. So to all you married guys, I'm going to give you some advice. Pick the right one. The right choice of a life partner can make or break your everything in your life, from your financial situation to your level of happiness and contentment with life. I have no complaints, and I feel blessed that God chose in his wisdom to send a great woman to take care of me, and that's exactly what she does for both me, and she's a wonderful mother to my children. I basically committed a cardinal sin today. For one reason or another, my wife thinks it's because my son's birthday is on March 28th. I mistakenly believed that our anniversary was on August 28th. So I didn't go get the flowers and the card, but she decided to give me a gift, and I went, oh no. And I said, hold that thought, I'll be back in 20 minutes. And me and my son raced to the store to get some flowers and candy and a card. 15 years married. It really does fly by. It really does. And, I was thinking about our marriage today and not realizing, but realizing it when I heard, 15 years. Wow. My eldest son is 12 years old, which means that my wife and I had 3 wonderful years without children, in peace and quiet. And then we had kids. And no, I wouldn't change a thing. I would never change a thing about my marriage or our life together so far. We have been very successful. And I think the reason for that is because we are alike in some ways, but we are incredibly different in some ways. And that sometimes makes a good marriage, right? Opposites attract. She's very, I don't know. She's very different from me. She's very sort of the person that plans things out and is very cautious about everything. And I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants through life. So I help her to be a bit more spontaneous, and she helps me to be a bit more grounded. Yes. ML says, remember the chick who took too many gummies and flipped out on Jimmy Church's bus out to Alien Inn Bar for the bonfire, the freezing cold at Disclosure Fest? Yeah, she took too many gummies and they had to pull the bus over because she was having like a psychotic breakdown. Great. Hank McGurk says, you really put it into perspective. So comments or questions for me, please put them in all capital letters. And I want to thank those who have asked me for tonight's. I got a lot of people that said, can you just give us an overview in a few hours of the whole UFO scene and what your experience has been? And I tried my very best to do that tonight. Now, certainly there's probably 100 people I should have included, but did not. Maybe we'll do a part 2 if people, oh, that's interesting. Trolley Troll Troll, I still have the t-shirt I bought for you and Roswell. Tell me where to send it. Email me and I'll give you that address. I used to refuse to give even viewers that I trusted my address. I just didn't want my address out there, but I've been doxxed so many times by the true believing Kool-Aid drinking cult members that everybody probably has it, but I'll give it to you, Trolley Troll Troll. Just email me or send me a message on Twitter or Facebook. Either way, just make sure I know you're Trolley Troll Troll when you send a message, and I'll make sure that I get it. I get it for you. So questions or comments for me, please put them in all capital letters. As far as tonight's presentation, we may do a part 2 where we go through more people that have had problems from a moral perspective selling fake stories. Third Coast Swing, Steve, could you name a couple of your favorite UFO books, entertaining or serious? I really liked this book recently that I had to read it because I was going to interview the author. And one of the things I'm really big on here is, I'm not going to name names, but I hear podcasters interview an author and the author of the book comes on the show and they go, well, I didn't read it, or I didn't read the whole book. I don't like that. If you're going to interview an author about a book, read the book. So recently I got gifted a free book. It's called The Devil in Dreamland, I believe. Let me just check to make sure. The Devil in Dreamland. Well, let me check on Amazon. I think it's on Amazon. Yeah, The Devil in Dreamland. And we had Ursula here, the author. And I thought that that book was incredible. Yeah, The Devil in Dreamland, Catholic Faith, UFOs, the Occult, and the End. Here, I'm going to share my screen. We'll give a shout out to Ursula. Yeah, Ursula Bielski, who we interviewed here. You can find that in our archive. Now, you may think, like, what does Catholic faith have to do with UFOs? But it's really not what I expected. I expected it to be sort of a preachy Catholic view of UFOs and aliens, but it's really more of a complete and total history lesson on the history of the contactee movement and the Collins elite and UFO cults and contactee movement. And it is really well written and well executed. I thought this was one of my favorite books that I've read in a long time, and it's an easy read. I think it's only a couple hundred pages, but it's very dense. In other words, there's just a great deal of information on each page, so it didn't need to be a 500-page book. She fit it all into a couple hundred pages. I think that is just a really, really great book. And I also would highly recommend Jack Brewer's book, The Greys Have Been Framed. I think it's called The Greys Have Been Framed. Let me check on that too. The Greys Were Framed. I think that's what it's called. Now I can't find it on Amazon. Let me see. Jack Brewer. I'll search for Jack Brewer. And he's from Expanding Frontiers Research. Yeah, The Greys Have Been Framed. Exploitation in the UFO Community. Look at that. Jack Brewer does an incredible job about how people in the UFO community are exploited and preyed upon, and it's just a great read. And he's an excellent researcher. I think he's a great writer. I highly recommend his books. And if you're on the believer side of things, there's one book that's a guilty pleasure of mine. And that book is called Children of Roswell. Now, regardless of, I'm still on the fence about Roswell. It's the one case that I can't let go of. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but this book is one of them. And here I'll share this book. And we've interviewed the author of this. It's Thomas Carey and Don Schmidt. And a 7-decade of legacy, intimidation, and cover-ups. And I don't know what it is about this book, but it's because of this book that I cannot let go of Roswell. And I suppose the reason for that is I have a hard time believing that all of these people on their deathbeds just decided to start telling fake stories about aliens crash landing at Roswell. And that's essentially what this book is. And I get that it's secondhand stories, because it's not from the principal witness to the events. It's kind of like stories about the flying saucer crash at Roswell and the alien bodies recovered and things like that, told to the children of the original witnesses. And many of these stories were told to the children for the first time when they were dying. And I don't know, there's something about a deathbed confession that is very compelling to me. So I really, this book is one of those guilty pleasures. And you guys know how skeptical I am, but I have a hard time with this one book, because this one book, it just kind of makes me think, how the hell, why would these people make up this stuff, right? AZ asks, have you done any episodes on Simon Parkes previously? Yes, I did. And here's what I will do. I'm going to put the Simon Parkes episodes into the live chat, and I'll pin it so that you can to your heart's content. Simon Parks is another guilty pleasure of mine. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like, oh, I had sex with a cat queen alien, and we had cat queen alien human hybrids, and I lost my virginity to an alien woman, and like, he's just bizarre. I'm just going to put Simon Parks episodes, and I will pin it in the live chat. You can use the search. Now, I realize, one of the things that I was kind of not very well aware of until recently is that most people are watching the shows on their phone. I thought more people would be watching on their desktop. And I'm aware that on a desktop, you could just use the little magnifying glass and search for anything you want. But if you're on a phone, it's a little more difficult. In any case, I've put the Simon Parks episodes, they're pinned into the live chat right now. And I hope that you check those out because they really are funny. We Are Steve in Canada says, I didn't know David Wilcock's ex likes cucumbers. Oh, boy. Al Garay says, this was a great overview of today's UFO scene. I would love to see a part 2. I forgot about some of these grifters. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do that. Just to be clear, I don't care if you guys talk about anything related to, let's just say, recreational fun in the live chat, but I don't want to share it on the screen. Operation Shutdown says, my favorite part tonight is when you recapped Emery Smith being under attack by a bottle of vodka. Yeah. And by the way, I just want to put on the record, I've had my own issues with substances that I find problematic. And my hope is that Emery gets some help. And, instead of getting the guy some help, everybody just keeps putting him on a stage. And there's reports that he's got a big bottle of water while he's on stage talking about aliens. But that's not water, it's vodka, right? Oh, Third Coast Swing says, just bought it. Children of Roswell. Yeah, those guys ought to give me a commission. People ask me all the time what books I like. That's one of them. And you know what? I think we're going to do a night where I do just a quick overview of, like, let's say 25 books that I find compelling or interesting. And yeah, sure, mostly alien or UFO themes, but maybe some more physics or science-based books. We'll see what happens with that. We Are Steven says, I bet Emery is fun to party with. Sounds like it. I mean, he's doing all kinds of stuff. So he sounds like he would be fun. I met the same kitty queen. She said that guy was an a-hole. Yeah. So let me know in the comments or in the live chat, would you guys like to see a part 2 of this sort of general overview? And I promise that next time, I kind of ran out the clock writing this all, and I didn't really have time to like go make pretty graphics, so I think this will suffice. And we can take tonight's broadcast and I can cut those photos in as we're talking about each person, do a little editing to fix this lack of media. Because I know if I just sit here and read something for 2 hours, it's not as good, right? Deep dive and highlight Ross again. Well, I mean, you could just go through the deep dive we already have of him. Not much has changed, except now he is promoting Lue Elizondo, the fake Pentagon program director, again, right? Oh, Larry Love, I'm sorry. Listen, if I ever miss a super chat, feel free to just put it in all caps like you missed my super chat. We don't want to miss any of you guys. Larry Love, I almost missed this one. Kind and Generous $4.99 super chat says, I have one last question. I turned your judgment, Stephen. Do you believe the U.S. government has bodies or craft in its possession? Most of me thinks not. However, there is some things like Roswell that I have a hard time letting go of. And I also, one of the things about Roswell is the debris switch. And, it's not just Jesse Marcel Sr. who says they changed the debris. There was another witness who said this was not what we picked up in the desert, what they showed these photographers. There was a switch, and they switched what we picked up in the desert for this junk from a weather balloon. That wasn't what we saw in the desert. So I think that all of these legends had to come from some nugget of truth. So I still think maybe, and I hold open the possibility. Unfortunately, we've done a deep dive into UFO crashes, Larry Love, which you would probably enjoy. And most of what we found is hoaxes and evidence-free stories and, sort of profiteers and no real direct or empirical evidence. One of the things you realize the longer you're in the UFO community is that you're never going to see a smoking gun proof of anything. What we get is sort of like tantalizing maybe evidence, like, oh, that might be evidence of something that's interesting, but you don't get the smoking gun, like the bodies or the spaceships, right? Oh, thank you. Third Coast Swing says, congrats on Murder in UFO Land, by the way. The stories were dark but compelling. Yeah, I appreciate it. Megafan says, great stuff. You have the right user ID to be complimenting us like that. Thank you very much. Aliens Are Sus says, Terrence and Billy Carson are the Anunnaki superheroes duo, Dumb and Dumber. Can't say I disagree, right? I cannot say I disagree. Above the Clouds is listening, not chatting much, multitasking. Hey, I hear you, son. Sometimes I'm in a live chat and I don't even realize I'm in a live chat. I'm just doing like housework or, cooking dinner or something. And then somebody's like saying stuff to me and I don't realize it until later, right? Troll. Extra large. That's fine. Large or extra large. I could take either. And I appreciate that. Troll's got a t-shirt for me. By the way, I've gotten multiple t-shirts from viewers. I always wear them on the show. If you've seen that one, Nothing is Impossible, that's from a viewer. The Angel one, that's from a viewer. Multiples. And plus we wear ones from our merchandise store. By the way, if you're interested in t-shirts about aliens and UFOs, be sure to check out our merchandise store. We haven't been selling many t-shirts, but quite honestly, I've been too busy to keep promoting that. You got to keep reminding people. I'm a terrible I'm a good show host, but I'm a terrible business person. Let's say that. But we do have an Amazon store, all for truth seekers. I'm going to share my screen so we can promote that. I'm going to try to start getting better at this. And you can get yourself, look at this one. This is one of my favorites. This is the woman's version, but it's still. Professional wackadoo translator. That's right. You too can become a professional wackadoo translator. And you see that? Look what's in my cart. Somebody sent me a copy, but I wanted another copy. Anyway, welcome to the land of make-believe. You can get a Truth Seekers sweatshirt or muscle shirt or t-shirt, V-neck tee. Here's the Linda Moulton Howe killed those cows with a shovel sweatshirts. Classified as hell. Yeah. So all kinds of Truth Seekers merchandise that is available on our Amazon store. The link is in the description. Disclosure coming soon. Here's another one of those things. Disclosure coming soon. So check out, if you like alien and UFO, swag, check out our merchandise store. We'd appreciate it. And those funds help support our show, just like Patreon and PayPal and the super chats and all that stuff. We'll take a moment to check in with the coffee buyers. You can also buy me a coffee or send me a PayPal pledge. Oh, wow. We've got a kind and generous pledge from North. I haven't seen in some time. North. So North is a big and longtime show supporter. North is. Sends some big bucks, like today sent a PayPal pledge for $50 and says, hey, Stevie, I hope all is well. What did I miss in the last few months? Been away for a little. Boy, you missed, I don't know, last couple of months have been pretty crazy. I'd have a difficult time even trying to explain it. We're continuing with the Murder in UFO Land series. We keep going with ongoing coverage of some of the grifters in Griftland, UFO land and more. Now I'm being accused of grifting. Why? Is selling t-shirts grifting? We tell people the truth here with facts, with evidence, with supportive documents at times. Listen, if I got to sell t-shirts to keep the show going, I'm going to sell t-shirts. If I have to start selling dildos to keep this show going, we're going to have Truth Seekers dildos, you clown. All right. Al Garay laughing at classified as hell. It's worthy of laughing at. That's why we made a t-shirt. And that is a reference to Eric Hecker, who had documents on his website he claimed were proof of his claims, in which marked at the top of this apparently or allegedly classified document, it said classified as hell. How fake can you get? It's so stupid, right? Yeah, Megafan says we got to keep the lights on. Yeah, man. I'm going to start selling anal lube if I have to, okay? I'll sell dills, anal lube, you know, pocket peas, you know what I mean? Strokers, fleshlights. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. I bet you that'd be very popular. My audience is a bunch of degenerates. I'm sure you guys would buy that shit. And isn't it funny that one of the prominent people in the UFO community has been accused of selling those things on eBay? And it's completely and totally false and not true, but they keep saying it. Third Coast Swing likes this idea of the dills and the strokers. Hey, you gotta serve both sides of the audience, man. But we are 85% male audience. And by the way, we love you ladies. You know, we always have a few ladies here, right? And I'm glad for that. They save us from the sausage party that usually is, right? So, listen, I think we've done our due diligence. We've just passed 3 hours. I'm going to bounce on out of here, but I will be back. I wish I could tell you more about tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Here's what happened. I got a hell of a show together with really great gotcha moments, like really get one of these grifters by the balls, by the short and curlies. We got them. Irrefutable evidence of grifting, lying, and scamming people. And then today, out of nowhere, the gods of gotcha moments blessed me with another incredible story of by the ball. Oh, we got two of these people then. So essentially, I have two shows that are incredible that I can't wait to do. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this. I thought that we'd do one more show for the week, but I'll probably do both of them because they're both that good. You don't want to miss these. I'm not sure which one we're running, but we're running one of them tomorrow night. That's why I said I wish I could tell you more, but I got to work it out. So tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be here, and I hope that you will be here too. But for now, I hope this will do. Many of you asked for this sort of overview, and I hope we did a decent job. It's very difficult to kind of really get my thoughts, gather my thoughts and write this and figure it out and who we're going to include, who we're going to cut. But I think giving all these examples shows you how deceptive the UFO community is. And I think we have to at least recognize and understand that. And anybody who pretends otherwise, you know, you're an ostrich with your head in the sand, ignoring the obvious. And I feel sorry for you. I'm glad I woke up to all this. I used to just eat this shit and think it was real, all of it. But after a while, you learn that you got to fact check everything any of these people say in this community. So anyway, friends, that's all I got for you. I'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I want to take a moment to remind you, smash that like button on your way out. Leave a couple of comments. Share these videos on your social media. And if you haven't already, be sure to smash the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll know when we're doing a live broadcast. And I'd love to have you here with us. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Canby, and good night, and God bless all of you.
I believe that you will agree with me when I say that in the last few months, and especially the last few weeks, that the anointing of the Holy Spirit on the telecast has been exceptional. The letters that we are receiving, the comments that you are giving us, but above all, it's just there. And we thank the Lord so much for it, because it is the anointing that breaks the yoke. It breaks that yoke asunder, whatever the yoke may be. I want to thank you also for the help that you gave us last week concerning the appeals that we made, how we are rejoicing. I wish I could give you a total now. I can't. I just can't. I don't have it yet. But I'm asking you, please. God spoke with a lot of you that did not respond. And we love you and we thank you, but when God speaks to you, I know he'll bless you if you will respond. And if you could send a gift of $50